stop reading books about health, stop listening to podcasts about health. I better not sing because I'm a terrible singer. It's like, the brain doesn't care. Swifties consuming Taylor Swift songs on repeat over and over and over will have very, very strong memories of that for the rest of their lives. You can't offset a bad daily routine with a gym membership. And the simplicity of it is why it works. It's not AI, it's not tech, it's a human being.
What is the infinite resource that we should be relying on?
Luck.
Welcome to the Visionary Podcast, where we discuss science, medicine, physical health, and mental well-being. Dr. Julia Jones, you spent over 30 years studying, researching neuroscience and psychology. You have this fascinating blend. You're a neuroscientist, biohacker, an entrepreneur, a DJ, and you play the guitar in a band and all. But behind this public persona, there is a life experience that drives you to champion preventative care. Would you like to share that with us, please, if you don't mind?
Yeah, I was in the health and fitness world throughout the 90s and was firmly convinced that was going to produce healthy nations. And then my dad died of a heart attack in a hotel celebrating his 65th birthday with my mum after years of obesity-related illnesses, and an inability to change his exercise habits, his eating habits, combined with the fact that back then we were giving the wrong information to avoid fat and everything else, but that's a whole other conversation. And then more recently, my mum last year, very late diagnosis of cancer, bowel cancer, then died 12 weeks later, a couple of months ago. So, there is clearly a flaw in the model because we've been telling people the same advice, pretty much giving them advice, and then expecting everyone to go and miraculously be able to form those habits on their own, which clearly doesn't work for most people. And so that's been the driver of my work over the last many years, and continues to be so because I believe it's the biggest challenge we've got. If we don't fix the problem through preventative success, then we're doomed as far as I'm concerned, because the problem is mostly our behavior.
Yes. Are there certain decisions that you make now and you consciously think, doing this for my father? Not
really. I mean, it's a part of the story. That highlighted to me that it didn't work. Back then, I'd built a very successful health club chain in the 90s, and we were making a ton of money because it's a brilliant business model. People join, they start coming to the gym, then they fizzle out, but they don't cancel their direct debit, and they continue to pay.
But they don't show up.
They don't show. So it's a great business model, I mean, even when they do cancel, there's always a steady stream of people coming through the door to join, of new members. So as a business model, it is a very solid model. But for a behaviour change solution, it clearly is not working. There is a missing piece in that protocol that isn't there, because otherwise, we've been giving these recommendations since the 80s, since I entered the sector in the late 80s. Surely we would have produced healthy nations now if that model worked. There is something missing in the model, and that's the journey that I've been on, is that I knew that there was a flaw in that protocol, and so I went on a mission over 6 years to try and figure out why it doesn't work and what we should be doing instead. And so that's.
What is a missing piece that you found?
Well, after going down an incredibly large number of dead-end rabbit holes, eventually, after having looked at a ton of different things, from apps to supplements to wearables to gut health, they were all coming back to one limiting factor, which is the fact that, if you take supplements as an example, if you start taking supplements but don't form a habit around that, then the supplement only works while you're taking it. So you have to form a lasting habit of taking that, or if it's exercise, you have to form a lasting habit. And most people cannot get to the point where the brain has wired that behavior as a behavior that will become the automated process moving forward. And so when that became, it was popping up, no matter what I was looking at, this fact kept popping up that most people will start doing all these things, start using the wearable to measure their biology, start using the app, whatever it was. But they couldn't keep going long enough unless they had human support. So that became the kind of the screamingly loud outcome of my research journey, is that actually we need to figure out, how do we scale up human support? So then I went on a different track to try and identify the minimum effective dose of human support. And then once I'd found the minimum effective dose of human support, I had to figure out how to then enable health and wellness providers to deliver that minimum amount at scale.
That's brilliant. We'll talk about Holidity, but I want to go back a little bit when you were 19. When you
back
read,
in the day.
I know, the lovely days. When you read about dopamine and the brain's reward system, how did understanding the brain's chemistry help you coach people right now with the product that you have? We'll talk about Holidity. How did that benefit you now?
Well, it was a complete accident through... I was a tennis coach, and I was in a band, and so I took my, I used to have the ghetto blaster with the tape decks and the two speakers at the end, and I would take that, put the batteries in it, take it onto the tennis court, and I would be listening to the songs that I was learning for the band that I was in, because I was in a rock
19.
band. Yeah, and so I started realizing that the kids that I was coaching were coming back more. I was becoming a very successful tennis coach, partly because I was using the music then within my sessions. So getting the kids to time their shots in time with the beat of the music that we were listening to. And so I was incorporating music into the training. Then I read a book called The Inner Game of Tennis, which then opened me up to the fact that, there's something going on in here. There's all this stuff going on in the mind and the psychology of it, and that absolutely fascinated me. And then I ended up going and doing a sport and exercise science degree, and then diving into that, in a lot more detail.
At that age, you instinctively realized at the age of 19 that timing, hitting the ball with the rhythm or the beat was a good thing, was a positive thing. What did that?
But I didn't know why.
Didn't know why.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's the you could see that using the beat of the music as the metronome to try and get people to lock into the rhythm of hitting a stroke and just getting into that training that motor behavior action by locking into music as a metronome, But I didn't know. So I could see that it was working. And also because it was more enjoyable when the kids liked having music in the tennis. I was getting more work than anyone else because I was using music, not because I was a better coach necessarily, but because my sessions were producing results, because the music was helping lock in the kind of training principles, but also because they enjoyed it.
Hi, I'm Hala, your host today. If you're enjoying what you see, please hit that lovely subscribe button. It will mean a lot to us. Or maybe a small podcast now, but with your support, we can build this channel together, one step at a time. Thank you so much for being part of it. Now, with all the knowledge that you have, looking back, how exactly did music help those children achieve maybe better performance, better stamina? We have a lovely brain here. How did the music function in their brains? What was happening there?
Well, it's the magic of music within the brain, because there are so many parts of the brain that are activated when you're listening to music, when you're making music, when you're playing music, when you're singing. There are, Even visually, you know, the temporal lobes are activated. The motor cortex is activated. Especially in the example we're talking about on the tennis court, but the main trigger really it is the enjoyment response. So you've got a serotonin and dopamine response going on because people are enjoying it, especially in that group setting. You know, it's fun, and and especially if it's music that they knew because it was songs that were in the charts right then, so they were familiar with the songs. If we look at the way the brain wires behavior, because looking at it as a tennis coach perspective, you're trying to wire together millions of neurons in the brain so that forehand shot is perfected, right? And so you have to hit it over and over and over again, because that process in the brain called long-term potentiation is how we wire habits, how groups of neurons that are repeatedly activated are wired together through that process. So if you're trying to get someone to form a habit of a perfect technique, then you have to do it over and over and over again, and using music as a metronome for that.
Would that maybe distract them from fatigue or something?
Yeah, so feelings of fatigue and just it's the enjoyment factor, because if people are enjoying something and they're focused in on it, they will do it for longer. And there is no shortcut to wiring all the neurons together. You have to do extreme repetition of that behavior, but there is no other way that it works. And this has ended up being, that long-term potentiation process then became, I've never really thought of this until this immediate moment, but the long-term potentiation was the limiting factor in the research project that I've been doing right now. And that is the full focus now of my work, is explaining to people how that long-term potentiation process works. But that was exactly the same process that we were activating when I was 19 doing the tennis coaching, because it's about wiring neurons together into a behavior that exists as a lasting habit.
It's a full circle.
Yeah, and I think I hadn't really thought about it until this second. And I think when you look at, there are so many things linked to this, but coming to present day, to when we 40, 50 years of diet, fitness and wellness trends and recommendations haven't had any impact on a rising, spiraling health crisis, because we don't teach people how the brain wires behavior. So if I ask a coach, or if I ask a personal trainer or anything else, how does the brain wire behavior? Blank, because it's not in the curriculum. We're not taught that, and so the personal trainers and the coaches and all the help, even the doctors, they're not teaching people how the brain forms habits. And if you explain the basic biology of it, then it makes complete sense to people why you have to aggressively go after that habit, trying to do it every single day for months. Otherwise you will fail. Because the way that I describe this long-term potentiation process to people is like a rose. If I wanted to buy a rose, I could go on my phone now, buy it. Yes. Then it would be delivered tomorrow, thanks to the miracle of modern delivery. But then when I plant it in the soil in my garden, the roots are not going to suddenly explode out of the bottom of it at the press of a button. I'm going to have to look after that rose. I'm going to have to water the rose. I'm going to have to feed the rose. I'm going to have to probably put a stick in the ground and maybe tie it up so it's got a bit of support in the windy weather, while that the root network, a biological process of all those roots growing out into the ground, that takes time. And exactly the same with the long-term potentiation process is that, if this is a brain, if my hand is a brain cell and this is the cell body, these projections are the dendrites. When you're repeating a behavior, that brain cell is moving molecules from the cell body and placing them on the
That's in
outer
my brain?
membrane of the dendrites. So the more you repeat the behavior, the more of these you're putting onto the outer membrane onto the membrane of the dendrites. They act as receptors, so that brain cell can then capture the neurochemicals that are transmitted from the brain cells nearby. And this is how networks, millions of brain cells have to be wired up like that to create a lasting behavior that becomes your normal habit. Well, if you don't keep doing the behavior long enough, a reversal process, if it hasn't reached a point of stabilization and you stop too soon, a reversal process happens where the cell transports those molecules back into the cell body. It recycles them back in. So
Yeah, well, most of us, we do the action or try to form a habit, unrealizing that there's actually things happening in my brain
Exactly.
while I'm doing the action, and even things happening in the brain while I'm letting go of the action.
Yeah.
Which
Yeah.
this is a brilliant idea, but we talk about, okay, if we want to form new habits or for change to be sustainable, you keep talking about long enough. How long?
Well, that is
they say you need 21 days to form a new habit.
Yeah.
What's your position?
It's not as simple as that, because if you think of all of the habits that we have and all of the habits that we have to form. So I did a forensic examination of my daily routine as part of my research. I found 48 habits within my daily routine that would positively or negatively impact health. So little things, big things like the things I was eating, but also little.
Give us examples, please.
But also the time of day that I was eating it, but also little things like what time was I going outside to get access to daylight? When I was walking to meetings every day on the London Underground, automatically getting on the escalator on the right hand side and standing on it instead of entering that escalator on the left hand side and walking up it. That automated habits throughout the day. So if you think about that range of 48 things that I found within my own daily routine at a granular level, those habits are so different. Some of them were very difficult to tackle, and some of them were very easy.
And the difficult ones would typically take longer to form.
Take more effort, or you have to buy things, or you have to go somewhere to do it, so when people say, well, how long will it take? Well, what is the habit that you're trying to form?
Let's say the big ones: cutting sugar, exercising every day.
Yeah. So then wrap around that. Who do you live with? What's their behaviour? Are they eating differently? Are they not exercising? Do they all want to get on board with you? So you've got lots of people within the house want to do the same thing, so that'll make it easiasier.
Let's assume worst case scenario. They are resistant. I have a 9-year-old and she's eating. I don't allow her to eat rubbish a lot, but
yeah.
Okay.
I mean, we're talking months. High frequency repetition. So preferably something every day for months.
4 months.
To really solidly lock that in. And
4 months, 3 is different than 9. Give me hope.
Yeah, well, it depends, because some people won't be able to do it every day for months. So that there isn't here's the body of research that says exactly how long it takes because it depends on the habit that you're replacing and the strength of that habit. It depends on your personal genetics. So
yes,
just
biology plays a role. Right?
Yeah, I've been on the planet for 55 years, and I've never, in that time, I've met millions of people, but I have never yet met someone who looks exactly like me, because at a macro level, we all look the same sort of shape, but at a microscopic level, we are all different at cellular level. And the same in the brain. The way that your brain has developed depends on your experiences during childhood. It depends what you've been exposed to. It depends on how structured your reward circuits are in your brain. If you've got very, very high functioning reward circuits in the brain, you'll have very high levels of intrinsic motivation. So you might be much more driven and able to do it on your own, whereas someone else
we'll have a
different brain.
We'll assume that we can't do things on our own. Otherwise, it would have been very easy. Driven maybe a little bit.
Yeah.
But you talk about environment, people that you live with. You talk about your biology. Does that mean that willpower or motivation is overrated? Should I rely on any of them?
I don't believe that. When a lot of people put their habit failure, down to I must have be lacking in willpower. Why can't I do it? And it's just not true. We don't. A lot of these habits we're having to override evolutionary biology to form them in the first place, because
Explain that to me, please.
Not so. So our brain lives in a dark, silent box called the skull. It has no idea what's going on in the outside world except for the information that's being fed through our senses. The brain, the job is the survival, is basically survive.
Yes.
So take in all of that information from the outside world and determine how to then activate behavior so that we stay alive. And so throughout our evolutionary history, we've been looking for food. We're on the hunt for food. Where is food? Food is scarce. Yeah, so if you see food, eat it. In your line of work, asking us now in our modern environment with this ancient brain biology and brain circuits to not eat all the incredible food that's all around us is hard, because we are wired to eat. And also on from an exercise point of view, exercise burns calories. Calories used to be scarce. So we are very much wired to sit down and conserve calories because they might be required for running away from a predator.
But why do you call our brain ancient? Didn't it catch up to our modern lifestyle?
Sadly, not in. I mean, it's this process is so slow. It's not going to have any impact in our lifetime or the next generation's lifetime or the next generation's lifetime. Because for the reason that the amount of change that we've witnessed, even during my lifetime, of the arrival of fast foods and the arrival of digital products and sitting in front of screens, and the change of the workplace and the hybrid working and just everything, that the way we travel, that has happened. A lot of that's happened within my lifetime. So a brain that is evolved, we share a lot of these circuits with many other creatures. It's not just in a human brain. So we're talking about millions of years of evolution before human evolution, hundreds of thousands of years of our evolution. Expecting that kind of biology to adjust within decades.
Yeah, so you're telling us that our brain evolved in a very different environment than the environment that we live right now.
Very.
So there is a mismatch between my ancient brain and how do we bridge this gap?
Just locking in those behaviours. We have to lock in behaviours that are often contra to the behaviours that were historic. So historically, I'd be sitting in the field, gazing out at the panoramic landscape, knowing that no predators were coming my way, and searching for the berries, and then sitting in the vast terrain, eating my berries, and then looking for some water. It's just not like that now, and this is a significant problem. And the effort that I had to put in to try and tackle those 48 habits that I identified
in yourself,
in my own routine, was immense. I mean, it's hard. And even now, I'll go into a restaurant now and I automatically just look for salad or fish. I don't even read the rest of the menu because I'm just used. That's just what I do. It's like, where's the salad?
So it's automated for you.
Yeah,
already wired in your brain.
But after that took a long time of long effort.
Trying to ignore the pies,
and when everyone else is choosing the pie, and I really want the pie, but I've got the fish. But then the fish arrives, and it's like, oh my god! And then everyone's jealous because the fish and the vegetable is so incredible, right? But forming those habits, it's hard, and so from what I've seen with my research, and not just even this last 5 or 6 years of research, but the whole decades of what I've seen professionally and personally, most people will not be able to do that on their own. It's you have to have immense amounts of intrinsic motivation and drive to be that disciplined. Mm-hmm. And I see that in, I worked in elite sport, and when you look at, we've just had the Winter Olympics recently, and I work with Olympic squads, and the amount of dedication that those athletes have got, they have very, very high levels of intrinsic motivation. That is
Coming
not
from
normal.
Where?
That's not, sometimes genetic, it could be from a family that were in that environment, but also just wired that way. Some of it is
through years of
practice.
Through years of practice, maybe.
Yeah, well, the discipline level, I think that comes very deep from within the person, that they are that type of personality, which is partially DNA, right? It's your genetics, but also combined with experiences that you have growing up. And that might range from that you were introduced to a sport at an early age and it just really grabbed you, or you might have seen it on TV and then had that role model of that person that you wanted to be, or you were in an environment that you wanted to get out of, and you saw sport as the escape.
Yeah, but you're telling us that there is the knowledge to change. We know what to do, right? We know the right thing, but there is, this is what's fascinating for me, there's the biological inability to do that sometimes. It's like, in a way, working against the brain, but we can't go back to the caves. But is there a way to optimize my brain to keep up with what we're doing now? Or is it the other way around? I should tune my ancient brain to become prehistoric? Is that, how do I do that?
Well, I mean, so there are a couple of options on the table when we're trying to figure out how to live in this world. You can either step away from it and really try and live as close to how we're meant to be living as possible, which would require, for many people, relocating to a different location, changing to a completely different job, different, it's a lot.
Cutting off mobile phones.
Yeah, and or align yourself with people who are trying to adopt the habits that you're trying to adopt, so that eat in the same way, that have the same mindset. It's much easier to do this with other people than try and do it on your own. So, and that might just be with joining a Facebook group or something, just so that you've got a community of people that are trying to live the way that you're trying to live. And simplicity and your environment. So I know I learned during my experiment, on my N of 1 experiment of myself, I cancelled my gym membership on January the 1st, 2020. And then I wanted to see if I could just change my habits and let my daily routine of habits keep me well without having to go to a location to do exercise or anything like that. I just wanted to see if it was possible through habits. And during that experiment, I had to acknowledge that I cannot have biscuits in the house.
Yeah.
I cannot have crisps in the house. I cannot have anything like that in the house, because I am, we were brought up with a lot of sugar, a lot of, not junk food, but there were sweets on the front of every comic that I would buy. It was normal, and I have a very, very deep craving for that kind of sweet chocolate ice cream food. I cannot have it in the house and think, oh, I'll just have one biscuit on a Friday morning.
Works for me. Never.
I cannot have it. And so the other way to approach it is to really do an audit of your environment. So what have you got in the house? What have you got? I did little things like putting the printer upstairs, so that during
so you have to go
during
upstairs.
The pandemic, so that when I'm printing off, just doing that kind of thing, putting all of my favorite mugs on the top shelf So I have to reach to get things on the top shelf instead of having them at convenient. You know, I try to inconvenience my daily routine, and at the same time also removing all of the stuff that I knew that I just can't have. And I think there are a lot of people in denial who are sugar addicts who don't really realise that, well, firstly, they don't really realise how colossally dangerous sugar is inextensive.
But there is a culture
surplus.
of everything in moderation, right? So, and that's how they consume sugar, and sugar is addictive, so they keep consuming sugar.
Yeah.
Because they were told the carbs, bad carbs, simple carbs, and sugar, it's in moderation. But we never do moderation in sugar.
No.
We never take a tiny bit of chocolate and eat the whole bar.
Yeah,
right?
it's, I think you have to learn your own biology. That is most people don't listen to their body. It's astonishing the number of people I meet who don't weigh themselves. So they have no idea what weight they are. And they have no idea what's happening when they do certain things. I've just been to New York. I put on 5 pounds. And now I'm adjusting my routine.
What happened
To lose 5 pounds. And it's just the portion sizes, the food at a hotel, the cooked breakfast, the huge cooked breakfast, the going outs, the lunch meetings, when you're outside of your routine, stuff happens. You have to then step back in, get back onto the normal habits that you've embedded and rectify that problem. Otherwise, it's another pound, and then it's another pound, and then it's another pound. And if you don't know what you weigh, you're really in the dark in terms of how your behavior is impacting your weight.
So if willpower and motivation are in a way finite resource, what is the infinite resource that we should be relying on?
Luck.
Okay. Hope. It's an amazing one. Hope.
No, humans are what we should be relying on, because it's really clear, massively evident, that the gap in the model is human support. So we've been giving people the knowledge and when I say people, I'm including myself in that. We are flooded with advice and flooded with recommendations and told what habits we need to fix and told not to do this and do that instead. And so we're given all the information. But when you then realise, and we're even given access to the most incredible equipment in the gyms and everything. But then when you go back to how the brain wires habits, that you have to do high frequency repetition of that behaviour for months, most people will struggle to do that on their own. And so human support is what we should be relying on, is find an accountability partner. It doesn't even have to be a professional. It could be your neighbour, it could be a friend, it could be a family member, it could be a colleague at work. It really doesn't matter what it is. It's find a buddy who also wants to aggressively go after a habit. It could be a different habit to you. Check in with each other every day, right? Have you done it? Yes or no? Right, see you again tomorrow. The simplicity of that, where you've got someone showing up for you, asking you if you've done it, keeping that habit at the forefront of memory. Because often what happens is on a Monday, someone will decide to tackle a habit. Well, on a Wednesday, they've forgotten what the habit was that they've chosen.
Yep.
Because we live in a hectic pace of life with a lot of distractions. The first job of checking in with someone in the early days of tackling a habit is remembering that you're even supposed to be doing the habit.
Yeah, it keeps you on track, right?
Yeah, it's like the reminder. It's like, have you done it today? Oh, God, I forgot. No, right, try again tomorrow. Back tomorrow. Have you done it today? Oh, I forgot. Right, we'll try again tomorrow. Just keeping that habit at the forefront of mind. Because in the early days, as you've got your brain here, the prefrontal cortex is doing the heavy lifting. You have to really force yourself to do that habit, because you have to remember to do the habit. You have to intentionally perform the habit. So it's a lot of effort in the early days, and having someone with you on that journey to keep going. And digital nudges don't work. We all thought, oh, humans are too expensive. Let's create an app and send someone a tech nudge, a notification. But now, it's decades since we got Fitbits and get apps. no impact, because the retention is so low, because we're now in the app fatigue era where we have so many apps, we have so many digital notifications. There's no social obligation effect with a bot. Whereas if you were messaging me every day and I just got the little WhatsApp from you saying, hey, right, checking in, did you manage to do it today? Yes or no? I'm going to reply, because
I wouldn't ghost you. I would reply.
Yeah, because we've made a commitment to one another to show up for each other.
As
exactly
well.
Each day. And so that is, in my opinion, that has been the missing gap, the missing piece of the puzzle in preventative health. And I think that is what the future is going to look like. Not AI, humans supported by AI and tech, underpinning them being able to connect with people at scale while still keeping that kind of one-to-one feeling of someone showing up for you.
I think I read something that you said about modern day products and apps. They are designed to hijack the brain's reward circuits. What is the idea behind this, please? Could you explain this to us?
Well, a lot of tech wants to keep you on the tech.
Yes.
So there is even with ChatGPT now, if you look at I can't remember the numbers, but a very, very, very high percentage of searches that ChatGPT is being asked is for help with health.
Yeah.
So asking about health. Now, if you've used ChatGPT, you'll see, or any of them, any of the large language models are the same. It'll give you an answer, and then at the end of the answer, it'll say, would you like me to look at these questions?
Or do this or that for you, follow up kind of thing.
Because it's trying to keep you engaged and keep you on there to keep using the platform. And people are searching for help with their health. And that's why we've, the rise of health influencers and the absolute flood of content of health online is that people are searching for it because they don't want, most people don't want to be unhealthy and have a hideous health future, but they can't do it. And so they're looking for help. But the tech approach of trying to keep you on there and the digital nudges just aren't the answer.
Yeah. And we do fall into habits that would give us instant gratification ahead of dopamine kind of thing, even if they harm us long term. People do the smoking, people do the all night scrolling kind of thing. How can understanding my brain's reward system help me wriggle out of this vicious cycle of short-term gratification, long-term harm? Do we need to be neuroscientists or study the brain?
Definitely not, because deep down, we all know the things in modern life that are good for us and that are not good for us. So we know this. And I think there is a wake-up happening, a wake-up call, where people realise they're being played.
Yes.
And even in the health and wellness space. So the constant, colossal tidal wave of content that keeps coming over and over and over and over again is because even the people who started off with good intentions online are now feeding their algorithm because they want more followers, they need more followers. It's a business model now, and so that business model has to be maintained. So, how many videos do we need? And I know this is really hypocritical because we are here creating health content.
But you're a doctor, you're a neuroscientist with a medical degree, so you're in a place of authority to say one thing or two.
The landscape now is sort of littered with health influencers and content, and people feeding the content algorithm to build numbers, to build followers, to build advertising revenue, to build a business model around what they're developing. And I think it's important. There is a wake-up call that people are realizing that they're being played, and actually it's some of the content is deliberately clickbaity to pull you into it. And
how do I filter out as a consumer or a patient? How do I filter out this huge content? Like if I seek medical advice or health advice, for example, I know that the NHS website can be outdated, for example. Mm-hmm. Okay, how do I filter out this? How do I recognize the good from the bad?
Again, ironic that we are on a podcast creating content about health, but when people ask me for the top tips for health, I say, stop reading books about health, stop listening to podcasts about health, stop immersing yourself in that tsunami of noise, because you know what to do. Go to bed earlier, drink water, eat proper food, be social, be active. And everyone knows that. So you know, the top tip is just try and focus on a habit and address it, and find a human to do it with.
Yeah. But are there ways to use this exact, easily misled reward system to my advantage while I'm developing good habits on the side?
Well, success breeds success, and you know, when you're triggering that reward circuit, it is motivating. You know, that's what it's designed for. It's designed to trigger repeat behavior. So and the problem is that people often pick the wrong habit to start attacking. So if you want to hack into that kind of reward circuitry, then it's much more beneficial to pick an easy habit and nail it.
So if I struggle with stress, with sleep patterns, smoking, for example, is there a right way of doing this? Which part do I start with? Or maybe attack them all at the same time?
Definitely not attack them all.
Okay.
So this is what I always say to people: line up the habits that you think you need to change. Now order them in their difficulty level. So what's the hardest? What is the absolute simplest one? Start with the simplest one. Even if it's not the priority one, doesn't matter. Start with the simplest one, because success is highly motivating. And once you get into the habit of forming habits and understanding the process of, right, I'm going to focus on that one. And it might just be, drinking more water, right? So that's relatively easy for me to do because there's access to water everywhere. And so I'll start with that one and just go after that one every day, right? Have I done it today? Have I done it today? And then when you've ticked off that one, pick another one in that list. Don't, because people often pick the hardest one because that is the priority one. It's the most devastating one. So they're going to go, right, I'm going to do that. Well, then they don't manage to succeed and fizzle out.
Yeah, that's New Year's resolutions.
And then there's no health outcome to it. So acknowledge that this process is very difficult in the brain. It's a biological process of molecules moving around to wire brain cells together. You cannot rush it. You cannot sidestep it. There is no other way of forming habits other than that biological process. So starting with a simpler one, and yes, having a list of, okay, I need to do this, 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 and this. But we'll start with that one. Right, now that is my normal routine. I always have some water with me on the go, and I when I go into a meeting, the first thing I do is go to the water, pour myself a glass of water, and form that habit, and then move on to the next one, and then the next, and then the next. Because if we go back to the tennis thing again, you don't start at Wimbledon.
No,
you start with a little tiny bat and a foam ball and hitting it against a wall. Start with the simplest things and then build on the foundation of that.
Oh, and is that how I would reward my reward system?
Well, the reward system is activated when we're successfully doing something and the pleasure of that, wow. So when we were talking about the daily check-ins with, find a human accountability partner, check in. When you're able to check in with them and go, yes, I've done it today. That is you're activating that
It's a
system
healthy
through
dopamine
that.
now.
Yeah, that is that's what that system is designed to give, that pleasure response through behavior that is intended to be repeated.
Yes.
It's just that things like chocolate, nicotine, alcohol, other things that unfortunately aren't good for us also trigger that same response, which can then, go down very different pathways of.
So the changes that happen in my brain while I'm forming good new habits, is that what you call neuroplasticity?
Exactly that, yes.
Explain that concept to us, please.
So if you, this mug, or a mug, if you're listening audio and can't see what I'm talking about, a mug, you'll be able to picture it in your mind. A mug is made, and that is the shape and its form for its existence. The brain is constantly changing. So every molecule that we put in our mouth, the molecules that are going up our nose, the environment that we're in, what we're seeing, what we're experiencing, the bacteria that we're exposed to, the thoughts that we have, the films that we watch, everything, that the brain is constantly molding into a different connections here, different connections there. There's constant change. And so it's a very plastic, it has that plasticity effect of being able to change. It's not one, back in the day, it's like, the brain, it changes through childhood and then that's the way the brain is. Well, that isn't the way the brain is. It's constantly changing right the way through to the end of our life.
Till the end of life. Wow, okay. For many of us, health is something that we will get to later in life. I used to think my brain is my brain. There's nothing I can do about that. But you're telling us now that I can wire or change the identity of my brain.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's something called cognitive reserve, which is the sort of the amount of synaptic connectivity that you've got. So how your brain cells are connected, and it's healthy to have lots and lots and lots of connections, and lots of active brain cells and lots of connections.
How do we do that? Through learning?
So learning, new activity, complex activities. And I often use the London tube map to explain it. If you want to go from St. Paul's to Marble Arch, then the central line, the red line, is the most direct route. But if the central line isn't running because there's a signal failure or something, and that line is not functional, then there are other ways for me to get from St. Paul's to Marble Arch. I could go to that stop and I could change onto the Northern Line and I could go down to somewhere. There are other ways of doing it. And if you are learning lots of new complex things throughout life, which we tend not to do because we do all our learning in youth and then sort of repeat our routines for the rest of our lives. But learning instruments, for instance, or new languages, very complex for the brain. You're building new connections, and having lots of connections is increasing your cognitive reserve, which means if some of those synapses get damaged as we get older and they stop functioning, it's not the end of the world. If that brain cell can go, oh, well, the way I used to connect through this junction no longer works, but it doesn't matter because I've got all of these other junctions that I can just send the signal around there instead. And so it becomes even more important as we get older to keep exposing ourselves to new learning experiences and very so a lot of social experiences, because social interaction is also very, very complex. You're reading someone's expression, you're responding to them, you're listening, you're timing how you're conversing. It's a complex pursuit of meeting lots of new people. So learning musical instruments, being social, learning language is a a health hack. You know, it's alongside all of the other important things, such as nutrition, good sleep, you know, activity, being social. We are genetically programmed to be in groups of people because that's how we survived, was being social in groups of people, which is why the rise of loneliness is such a huge concern and a major problem, because we now find ourselves being isolated, not even just in later life, but the way the workplace has evolved now to remote working and hybrid working, and that there's a lot more social interaction happening within the workplace for the younger generations as well, which is a problem.
Yeah, it's so refreshing to hear that, okay, I'm not stuck in the brain that I have right now. Well, I read about neuroplasticity and I think, gosh, it might be possible, but how is it really easy or difficult to create a new identity for the brain, for these synapses to click or fire? How difficult or easy is it if I want to create a brand new habit, learn a new language? Can you assess this?
It's not the difficulty as in the complexity of forming a new habit. It's the difficulty in terms of the effort of it because of the time frame of it. You know,
because it takes a long time.
Yeah, we'd all love to be able to speak French in a week. And you're more likely to do that if you are surrounding yourselves with other people who either can already speak French or who are learning French. And the more frequently you expose yourself to the new behavior that you're trying to do. So if it's learning guitar, if you do a couple of minutes every single day of learning guitar, so that you're activating all of those neurons that have to be connected in that way to form that movement and the shape of the chords and everything. If you're doing high frequency repetition, so daily repetition, you're going to progress at a steadier rate than if you have a lesson every Wednesday, but you don't practice in between. And you know, because you have, it's the frequency over a long period that is sending an electrochemical pulse through those neurons that make them better and better and more efficient and more connected until they reach a point where it's there. You know, that network is there and it will remain there even when you deactivate a habit. So you're never changing that neural network necessarily. You're just sort of not using it. So forming another habit will be a whole other neural network, and you just sort of switch the light off on the old habit. So the light is still there, the light bulb is still there, that circuit is still there, but you're not switching it on because you're choosing to not switch that light on because you've formed the alternative habit over here, and you're choosing to switch that light on.
So is there a moment when the brain tips and the effort feels all of a sudden easier?
So there is, I mean, it's if you look at the neurobiology of long-term potentiation, it is, as you can imagine, incredibly complex. The way I simplify it with, you know, a molecule going from the center of the body to the membrane is an incredibly simplified version of what is actually happening, because there are lots of molecules happening, lots of molecules being moved around, lots of different points on the dendritic, within the dendritic field that are activated to create that long-term potentiation effect, to connect the brain cells together. And there is a point of stabilization where long-term depression, which is the opposite effect, so when the molecules are recycled back into there is a point where that becomes stabilized, so the habit then continues to exist as the automated habit. And at that point, there is a lot less activity in the prefrontal cortex because you don't have to think about it. You know, when we're driving and you drive home and you don't even think about it, do you? It's like, oh, we've gone through those traffic lights already. Hopefully they were on green.
Yes.
But you've just gone past that, you know, because you no longer have to put your executive network circuit in the brain into action, so that the prefrontal cortex is really at a conscious level driving it, because it's now a default behavior that the brain just goes, oh, we're driving home. Select all of the neurons that are activated at the right time to get you to the destination, because it's repeated it to such a point that circuit is then stabilized.
Yeah. I read somewhere that our brains automate repeated habits to preserve energy.
Yeah, so that the brain uses a ton of glucose. It's a very gas guzzling, as in calorie guzzling machine. So from an evolutionary perspective, it makes a lot of sense to not have to put such conscious effort and not having to activate in such a high energy way each behavior. If it's a behavior that is going to be repeatedly required, it makes a lot of sense to say, oh, right, we can create that as a pattern and save that pattern. Like when you create a template for, social media or something like that. Not that I'm absolutely useless on social media. I am officially gold medal for being rubbish at social media, because it just doesn't.
You're doing well.
It doesn't interest me. I just don't post or create. But I believe that people who do, they create templates for certain types of posts, and then they reuse those templates and put different content in it, and things like that. And that's the sort of pattern. The efficiency part of the brain is that if there's something that's going to be used repeatedly, it's like, oh, this circuit of neurons is being used repeatedly for this behavior, so we'll save it as this pattern, this template, and then we can just activate the template instead of having to consciously really focus on activating everything, which is a lot of energy. When back in the day, in our evolutionary past, when calories were scarce.
That's very clever of the brain. Now, I've just come to a realization when you were talking the other day. Maybe this is too much information, but the other day, I lift weight every day in the morning before my child wakes up. If I'm sore, I just do Pilates, but it's like beautiful and really nice habit now. I used to really struggle to do anything, but now I do. The other day, I woke up discovering I've just had my period. I didn't think much. I was feeling already a bit uncomfortable and a little bit achy, but I didn't think. I just put protection and went on to lift weight. Then I had my shower and had my breakfast, and I did a breakfast for Olivia and all this. And I'm thinking, what the hell was that? You just had your period and you're lifting weight. A little bit of care, and you needed a bit of rest. Now hearing you, that's exactly what happened. My brain did what I was used to do every day. That's a practice. I wasn't even in the mood of, yes, let's do this. It doesn't matter whether I just had my period. No, it was totally automated.
Yeah.
Which, it's a beautiful thing. Maybe I should have opted for a bit of rest, but it didn't do me any harm that I lifted weight. It's just...
And I think that if you're in that routine, I think sometimes we overthink things when, we mustn't do this, that and the other. It's like, well, we were carrying water every day. There wouldn't be days where, oh no, we can't carry the children today because it's this date in the month, and so we'll have to. The child will have to walk today because we can't carry them. And I think with weight. We'll come back to the weight training thing, because there is that was one of the most interesting outcomes of my N of 1 experiment when I cancelled my gym membership. Sometimes we overthink things and overcomplicate things. So in my early sport and exercise science days and in the fitness sector, it's suddenly we were creating these protocols that were very specific. So whatever you do, make sure that you stretch your hamstring with this precise technique of stretching your hamstring. And when you're doing your lunge, do not let your knee go past this angle of whatever. It's like,
I hear that all the time.
Seriously. And now, when you think that we just used to be going around all over the place, like, we've got to get up that hill now, right? We'll just go up the hill, and then oh my God, there's a stampede of elephants. We don't have to stop. Right, wait, stop everyone. We have to stretch because we might pull a muscle when we're sprinting away from this herd of elephants. It's just like we kind of it became theatre, kind of like theatre production, and then
too orchestrated, maybe.
Yeah, we're doing the same with health and wellness. I'm seeing it. I'm sitting back and watching it happen, and I documented my research journey in some books because it was the pandemic. I had loads of time. I was doing a lot of research, so I was writing it up anyway. So it just ended up being books that I self-published, and then they got quite a lot of media attention. Then suddenly I was in media attention, and then suddenly I was like, oh my God, I'm becoming a part of this like thing. And in reality, what I think people should be doing is just go for a walk, have an early night, go and see your friends, eat the right food, have as little stress in your life as you possibly can, get daylight. And so we've overcomplicated everything. But going back to your point about lifting weights, so I cancelled my gym membership 1st of January 2020, tried to do everything within my daily routine. So bought the weights.
How much do you lift?
And so I started brilliantly, and then just couldn't. Then they were at the office. Then I moved office, and so they had to move. Then they wouldn't fit in the next office. There was nowhere to do it. And then they were outside in my garden, but then they were getting rusty. And then it was just like I just couldn't form that habit. It was the only one that I just could not form without a gym membership, right? Without a place to go and to lift weights. I just couldn't do it within my routine. And over that period, I went from high normal muscle mass to I'm now low normal muscle mass, back in the gym, building it back up again.
How would you know? Do you do the scale for the muscle?
Yeah, so we did a reading, and I could see it as well. It was obvious. I went from very high muscle definition to jellyfish.
You look good to me.
Jellyfish.
You look lovely to me, trust me.
It was very evident that everything that used to be hard was now very soft. And so that aspect is why, because the reason that I cancelled my gym membership is that I could see that the model wasn't working. So the model of sign someone up for a gym membership and then give them a program and then say, right, go for it. Most people won't be able to form that habit, which is why I'm back in the gym, but I'm now also working with the fitness industry to get the fitness industry to update the model so that within their model, they do these daily check-ins to try and help people form the habits, because just giving them amazing facilities doesn't connect the brain cells together. Getting in a busy, hectic life, getting yourself to a location to do an exercise takes a lot of effort. It's a lot of time. Time is money. We're all time poor.
Yes.
So, but that was the only one that I couldn't, and obviously that's one of the most important ones, right? It's trying to cling on to your muscle mass as you age. So
on a practical level, how would I know if a certain habit has truly stuck in my brain biology so I can relax a little bit or not panic if I miss it a day or two? How would I tell?
I think it's sort of obvious within your daily routine that you just automatically start to do things. So on the underground, now I don't even think about it. My brain puts me on the escalator on the left-hand side, whereas I used to enter the escalator on the right-hand side and stand. Now I am all, before I even think about it, I'm on the left-hand side of the escalator. That is an automated habit that, sometimes I'm halfway up it and thinking, oh, great, my brain put me on the left-hand side of the escalator. It's just happened. But there were a lot of, there is a long prolonged period, because even when you think you've got to the point where the habit is there, you'll then go on holiday or something changes, and so you're not in that routine for a while, and then you have to really focus on refreshing that. But because you're just really polishing up connections that are already pretty strong, it's not difficult to get that habit back in action again.
Yeah, I remember we were filming now on the third floor in Tunbridge Wells at the Penthouse Chambers, and I never use the lifts now. I mean, the third floor is not, but the stairs are high.
I know, you just took me up there. It's like, oh God, how many flights are there?
I know, but I remember like a year ago, it will take a bit of persuasion between myself, take the stairs, Hala, take the stairs.
Yeah.
But now there is no, even if I'm tired, underslept or whatever, I do take the stairs without much effort in my head.
Yeah. So I worked with some property developers, pretty big property developers a few years ago, and we were designing new offices. And so they were showing me the designs, and I'm like, it looks amazing, guys. What an incredible glass and the foyer, and wow. Where are the stairs? Oh, the stairs are kind of like down the back here, past the lifts and, the back. So
where you can't find them.
Yeah, where they're not. I'm like, why aren't they like the first port of call? So it's why aren't you embedding that? Because we've got this culture of you go through the turnstiles and then you arrive at the lifts. And some of my clients, that was the habit that they picked, was to stop doing that and to use the stairs in the office. But there would be several days in the early weeks, and several weeks in the early days of trying to do a habit, and they would message me saying, "Oh, I suddenly kind of realised I was in the lift going up. When you're in, I'm in the lift," because that habit is so strong that you're not present. You're not present in that decision-making process because it is very, very deeply automated. That is the behaviour. You press a button, you get into the lift, and then before you know it, I'm in the lift. So you'll know when it's been automated, because you'll be halfway up the stairs and you'll be, I'm halfway up the stairs. Or I'm halfway up the escalator. It's like, I'm on the left-hand side of the escalator. It's like, wow, I didn't even have to think about that. Whereas beforehand, I would be getting off the tube, walking through the tunnels, going on the left, on the left, on the left, on the left, till I got to the escalator and then got on the left. It's there is a light bulb moment where you've got, right, this is starting to happen without me having to be involved in the decision. Right? There's no decision that has to happen.
Here's another thought. I'm 47. Do our brains retain the same capacity to change and to adapt, to rewire itself as we grow older? Can I still reinvent myself at any age?
Yeah, there's been a lot of studies around music in particular, of people in their 80s and 90s learning instruments, learning piano, being in choirs, so having to learn lyrics of songs and learning language. So there's no expiry date on neuroplasticity. It's about how badly do you want to do it.
Yes,
that's are you prepared to put the effort in, and things like U3A, isn't it? The University of the Third Age, that they do a lot of language courses, and so older adults and retired adults can learn languages or learn new skills or learn any activity. If you sign up to a course and you pay for a course, because money is a great motivator,
I'll be there.
If you've paid for it, and if you're doing it in a group of people and you go for coffee afterwards with those people, and then it becomes a social thing or whatever it is, that benefit will happen at any age.
Going back to music again, you just mentioned music again, which is a brilliant motivation for you. You visited a Navy SEAL base in San Diego at some point in your life, and you saw how they incorporate music. Tell us about that experience. What did you learn there?
Well, that unexpectedly was a very pivotal point, because I was not meant to be on that US Navy SEALs base. I was at a university in California on a student exchange trip. I went from Cardiff University to LA, and while I was while I was there, I got the opportunity to go to San Diego to visit this Navy SEALs base and met the physical training instructors while we were there. We were swimming in this amazing, Olympic-sized swimming pool outdoors in the sunshine, and met these physical training instructors. And they started to. I was in a band and DJing, and they told me how they were using music within their work with the SEALs. We already. Yeah, you see it in films where they sing when they're on route marches, I don't care, it helps them keep going. And so they'd already started using music like that, but they were also using music to reduce anxiety in high pressure situations, to teach breath work, using music as a metronome, using music to increase physical endurance, and all of these things. I'm like, wow, I'd never, obviously I'd read that, the Inner Book of Tennis psychology book, and then I had studied sport and exercise psychology during my degree. I'd never really thought that deeply about how, and I'd seen how music was being effective in tennis coaching and in sports coaching and in the sports environment, but their use of it just really grabbed me. And so when I came back to the UK, I did a master's degree in sport and exercise science in London. And I focused on the effects of music on the brain and on performance, which was then presented at the International British Association of Sport and Exercise Sciences, a very long mouthful, the annual conference, which then got published in the Journal of Sports Sciences. And then from that resulted in me working with the Olympic squads, where I introduced music as a training tool with the British swimming teams. And
the Olympic swimming team?
Yeah.
Okay.
Because music wasn't being used like that. This was in the 90s.
Now that was unheard of
now
at the
you
time.
you see all the swimmers come out with their headphones on now, right up to poolside. They've got their headphones on. They're using waterproof earphones during training in the pool. But back then it wasn't being used in that way. And so that's sort of kicked off everything. My PhD looked at the lifelong effect of music memories on the brain, which brought me back into health in the dementia space. And it's much more than entertainment. And over the last few generations, the music industry, rapidly evolved and positioned music as entertainment. It's a product. But before that, it's just a part of being human. It's how we connected. It's how we communicated before we invented words.
It predates language and modern medicine.
Yeah,
right?
it's when we go back to the brain is in a black silent box, the skull. It's using the senses, the information it receives to figure out if we're in danger or not. Well, sound is our 360-degree radar. It's, we can't see what's coming behind, but we can hear it. It's a very important input channel to the brain. Yeah. And every sound, the molecules of air that are entering into the brain through the ear, through the auditory canal, but also through our skin, because it's vibration. Sound is vibration. So that's what is triggering the sensory input to the brain. And then the brain is trying to decode that to say, does this sound like something that's potentially dangerous? And if so, we need to activate the sympathetic nervous system, fight or flight response, get the heck out of here. Or does this sound like something that's probably safe? And that is all that is happening with sound, is this a sound of safety or is this a sound of danger? And then the answer to that question will determine whether the parasympathetic nervous system can continue to keep us chilled and digesting our food and ready for the next emergency, or if we need to activate the fight or flight response and flee or get into combat mode. And the music industry and Hollywood have harnessed this neurological effect to great success, because they figured out the type of music that makes us calm, because it mimics the sounds of safety.
Yes.
And they've also created music that mimics the sound of danger. So dangerous sounds tend to be, thundering hooves of a stampede, or high, lots of fast beats, or loud noises. That dangerous things in the environment tend to sound like that. Whereas safe things sound very different. They're not necessarily as noisy. They're calm, and we know this from even genetically. If you're handed a baby and you want that baby to be calm, you don't swing it around in the air screaming at it.
No.
You gentle movements and gentle sounds, slow, soft sounds. And so we know, we're not taught that. We know that instinctively, that certain sounds are potentially dangerous, certain sounds are safe, and that is what the brain is doing. So the reason that music is so powerful in health, not just elite performance, if we put elite performance to the side and just look from a health point of view, is because if you want your brain to be calm, then giving it musical sounds of calmness, and it doesn't have to be music, it could be sounds of a gentle stream that sounds safe, or the sounds of nature, right? It doesn't have to be music, but that is a very good way of telling your brain that everything's fine, and we can switch off that stress response that is often chronically activated due to our modern life and the pace of modern life. And music is so accessible now through our phones, and it's so easy to access music that it makes it a very simple biohack.
You reference dementia right now. I believe you've did some work with dementia. I've done some work with dementia on your PhD, and how music that we learned in our high hormone years of youth would affect our brain. Tell us about that, please.
Yeah, so when I started that, I didn't expect that it would lead me in that direction, but I was interested in the fact that music. So a lot of the artists that are selling out arenas, and they're now in their 70s and 80s, and they're still connecting with their audiences from youth. And I just became fascinated about why is it that we have such strong recollections of music experiences from our youth, and why is it that a Duran Duran song can come on the radio when I'm driving that I haven't heard for decades, and I can pretty much sing every word of it. How does my brain know all those lyrics after such a long time? And so what ended up happening is that PhD started opening up back to this long-term potentiation effect in the brain again. It's like, how do we learn things? That is the LTP process of
LTP?
Connecting long-term potentiation. Oh, yes. So connecting all the neurons together that are involved in that habit. Well, when it comes to music, if you look at how we as in my generations before me, the way we consumed music during our youth is that we would excitedly wait for our favourite bands to release a song.
It was never was an on-demand kind of thing.
No, we would wait, and then we would be down to the record shop, and we would buy the record, and we would take it home, and we would play it over and over and over and over and over. Yep. And the brain learns through repetition.
Yes.
So our music behaviour was a high frequency repetition behaviour. That is how we listen to music. So this means that for my generation and my parents' generation, they have very, very strong memories of that music because of the repetition. If you think about, if you draw a line and you just draw it once, like an indentation, there's not much there. If you go over that again, it'll be deeper. If you go over that again, it'll be deeper. If you go over it again, it'll be deeper. So we've got very, very deep and strongly embedded networks around those memories. And it'll be interesting to see, because this is why it's so powerful in dementia now, when people can't recognise their family, they can't recognise photographs of themselves, and yet you'll play them a song that was hugely popular during their youth, and they'll be able to sing along with it because those memories are still retrievable. I don't think that effect will necessarily work for future generations, because that isn't how we now consume music. We consume music. We have so much music accessible to us. We don't go and get a record and then play it over and over and over and over and over. I mean, some super fans will. So the Swifties consuming Taylor Swift songs on repeat over and over and over will have very, very strong memories of that for the rest of their lives. But for people who are just grazing across playlists of lots of different songs and not really listening to music in that way, because we've now got such
huge
immense,
variety, right?
Immense amount of music, we're listening to each song much less. I don't think the effect that we're seeing in music and dementia now, I don't think that effect will work in future. But here's hoping we've solved the dementia problem like that anyway, and so then we don't need.
While you're talking, I got the impression that these songs are set somehow in my brain. The songs that I consumed in my early years of growing up, are they stuck in the brain somewhere?
Yeah, I mean, those memories are, deeply embedded.
Yeah.
So for definite, and things like, when so every day I do a quiz thing. It's my little brain health quiz. And I look at this thing, and a word will just come out, and it fascinates me, because I think, God, I have never used that word. Like, how do I know that word? That word would have been used during my early years when I was learning vocabulary, and we were having to do tons of reading, and we were having to do spelling tests and all of that. I had learnt that word through repetition, and never having, like yesterday, the word was skull. SCULL, and I was looking at it and I went, that's skull. And I'm thinking, I don't even 100% know when I learned that word, but that word is in there, right? So that there is so much content in the brain that we don't retrieve on a regular basis. Doesn't mean to say that those memories don't exist in there. And when you look at dementia, it's the ability to retrieve the memories, not that the memories necessarily aren't stored somewhere. It's that activity to reignite the neurons that were involved in that, to recreate it in your brain.
Why did nature design us so we could hold on to these old memories, despite the fact that when we grow old, we forget the simplest things?
Yeah, well, but most of our behavioural memory is, a lot of it comes back to our survival. Like, it's useful to remember things that were good because they were usually safe. And it's also useful to remember things that were bad because they were potentially dangerous. And so you don't want to go near any of those things anymore. So that kind of survival instinct of, my mum died very suddenly a couple of months ago, very shockingly. She seemed in incredible health, bowel cancer lurking invisibly beneath the surface. And when you look at that grief process, it's like, oh, why is it so painful? Like, what is the evolutionary purpose of making this journey so bad? And it's to remind us to kind of look after the ones that are still alive, And so all of these processes, we have to keep reminding ourselves that we live in this modern world of the past, 50 to 100 years, very, very, very different existence to hundreds of thousands of years of evolution. We've got this brain that is still using the old operating system.
So even grief has a purpose in my brain to protect us.
Yeah, I think that, so I'm not an expert in the grief space, but I've just been, because I'm immersed in the hideous journey of it right now, there must be a purpose for it. It doesn't make sense for it to be like this. And my kind of rationalizing of it is that it just reminds you of the value of the people that still exist. Because we go along in our life, you know, and you don't see your family and you don't see your friends because you don't have any time, and you rush, and I just, you know, I haven't got time to visit this person, I haven't got time to visit that person, and then you're dead. So it's a good reminder when you lose someone. And this happened with a friend of mine, you know, a very good school friend a couple of years ago. She died exactly the same circumstances, same age as me. We were in school together. She was in the first band I was in. She was the drummer. Bowel cancer, no symptoms, you know, within weeks, gone. And it's really brought the rest of us, my school friends, closer to get in contact. We're in contact all the time now, because it sort of reminded everyone. It's like, you know, why are we spending so much time working and chasing this and chasing that? It's a, you know, and I think that particular, you know, the bereavement and grief response is that because going back to survival, we were driven to be social animals because safety in numbers, right?
Yes.
It's about being with the family, being with other families, being in a community, so that we were safer than when we were on our own.
And those of us whose parents maybe have failing memories, is there a way to use these youth songs to bring them back a little bit, even for a few minutes?
Definitely.
Yeah. How is that being done?
So there are quite a few organisations now that help you make playlists, and sometimes it's difficult because families sort of get to a point where they start using music very late, and so at that point you can't ask the parent what are their most powerful songs, because that communication is no longer at that level of sophistication to be able to have that. So you're trying to figure out, okay, what were the songs that were huge hits when they were in school, you know, when they were young? What were the big, most popular numbers, whether it's the Beatles or the Rolling Stones or whoever it was? But I always encourage people to start using music. If you've got any kind of dementia-related journey going on, to start using music as early as possible, because firstly it's a great workout for the brain, but also it forms that habit of having music in the daily routine, which means music will then become part of that daily routine from that moment on. And as the disease progresses, you can still use that music habit and that music within the routine to have that engagement with that person through those songs.
That is very beautiful. Yeah. I read somewhere that you collaborated with Universal Music on a project called Music Hacks.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm curious, what did that project entail?
Well, when I visited the Navy SEALs base decades ago in the 90s, and they showed me how they were using music as a metronome for different breathing exercises. Okay. And so I've kind of used that a lot through the years. And in particular, there is a breathing technique that if you exhale for longer than you inhale. So if you breathe in, say you breathe in 4 seconds breathing in and then 6 seconds breathing out, that is bringing you, that's a 10-second cycle of breathing in and out. And so that brings you to 6 breaths per minute, which for the majority of people, roughly around that breathing rate, is known as resonance frequency breathing, which is calming the autonomic nervous system and activating the parasympathetic branch of the nervous system,
which is the calming
one. So you're sending that signal that through my breathing, I'm in a safe space. We can dial back the stress response and start to train that system to be in parasympathetic mode, which is, that mode should be our dominant mode in our daily lives. It's difficult in the modern world, but it should be. So what I did with Universal is that I had started trying to do it myself with music by just creating music that had 4 beats in a bar, followed by 6 beats in the next bar, followed by 4 beats in the bar after that. So I basically put 2 extra beats in every other bar. So a bar would be, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, right? So, and then if you create music that has that kind of timing, then you can use it as a breathwork training tool so that people can breathe in for 4 in time to the music and breathe out for 6.
Incredibly clever.
So, because normally music, commercial music, popular music, pop music is 4/4. So it's every bar has 4 beats.
How do I get access to such music?
It's on Spotify and Amazon Music. Just
do I look for your name?
It's under either. I think it's under Dr. Julia Jones and it's under Music Hacks. Okay. HACKS.
And I can use that at bedtime.
Yeah, and there's we did it in lots of different styles. So but whatever your preferred type of music is, there's a track there. So pop rock, blues, Americana, country, soul.
And all genres can soothe me, can soothe my nervous system at the end of the day.
So these particular tracks are training tools to teach you the timing of the breath response, right? So if you want the maximum impact in that given moment, you would choose one of those training tools that was a calm. You wouldn't choose the rock version of those tracks, right? Because the rock version is sending a signal to your brain that you're potentially in a dangerous situation.
Action.
Whereas your breathing with the 4/6 ratio is telling your brain that you're in a calm. But if you want the maximum impact, you want the sound to be saying that you're in a safe situation and the breathing to be saying. So if you're out and about and you just want to practice the timing of that breathing, then you can pick any genre because it doesn't matter. It's just you're just practicing the timing. But if you're in a moment of stress and anxiety and you want to quickly calm down, then using the tracks that are more the chilled, like the chilled lounge versions of it will have the maximum impact. Dr. Rock did it like that.
We'll keep that. I'm not going to cut this one. It's amazing. Thank you. So you are being affectionately called Dr. Rock, right? A neuroscientist by day and a guitarist by night. You have a band, right? What is it called?
Yes, it's called Pretty Crap. It is an all-female rock band. And I mean, I was Dr. Rock before that, due to the fact that for donkey's years I've been prescribing music as a health tool and telling everyone to use it within their life for health and performance, and with my PhD and everything. So I became this Dr. Rock. People were referring to me as Dr. Rock. But then a few years ago, I started having guitar lessons to learn to play electric lead guitar like Jimi Hendrix for brain health. And I was doing a talk in my local town. And during that talk, I said in the interview that I was learning lead guitar. And then someone in the audience afterwards came up to me and she said, I've learned bass guitar, and I've met another woman locally who's been learning the drums. So we hired a rehearsal studio and went and had a brilliant time in the rehearsal studio, thrashing out a few rock covers. Then we put an advert in Facebook to find a lead singer, and we found Roxy, this young, amazing blonde front woman, and we became Pretty Crap. And I think that was probably 3 years ago now, and we do gigs around Kent and we love it.
How often do you guys play?
Well, we could be playing a lot more often than I'm normally not there, so I'm missing loads of. There's now another guitarist that plays, so that they can do gigs when I'm not around. But yeah, I mean, we try to play. I try to play once a month, a gig a month. So this weekend we've got a rehearsal. International Women's Day, we're doing a gig, and we've got followers. They all buy the t-shirts, and they're all wearing the t-shirt in the gigs.
I love that,
and it's fun, and it's become more than the music as well, because we're like a little family. It's very bonding being in a band, and I've been in a band since I was on and off since I was in school.
Does jamming on stage influence your scientific work or vice versa?
One of the things that I've been looking at in recent years is, especially as I get older, aging has become more fascinating to me as I've been aging. And we have three types of age. So we've got our chronological age, which is our birthday. Then we have our biological age, which there are actually numerous biological clocks because different organs age at different rates, and but overall there's a general biological age that can be captured. So we have that age. And
how can it be captured?
So through a saliva sample or a little blood sample. There are companies out there, you can just do it at home, send it away in the post and get a biological age score.
And it could be more or less than my age, depending on your lifestyle, what you're eating, how you're sleeping, your stress levels, how much exercise you're getting. So the basic pillars of health, either, if your habits are negatively impacting your health, then your biological age will be accelerating faster than your birthday age. And you can also ramp it back. So unlike our chronological age, we can't move that forwards or backwards, but our biological age can be moved forwards and backwards. So by changing your habits, you can bring that biological age back in check and even reduce it further, depending on how much effort you put into your health habits. But then the third type of age is your subjective age, which is how old you feel. So mentally, your mindset. Yes.
And there's interesting research out there that shows that having a young subjective age is very beneficial as you get older, because you age differently. You can age better if you've got a young mindset, if you've got a youthful mindset, than if you've got an old mindset. And what I find when I'm on stage, so generally speaking, so my chronological age is 55. I was born in 1970. My biological age is about the same. Last time I tested it a couple of years ago, so around about the same as my age. And but my subjective age, normally sort of 30, between late 20s and early 30s, I would say. That is my mindset.
That's brilliant.
However, when I'm on stage, I am 16, 17, 18, which is when I was at first in a band, and it brings me right back to that moment of, just the buzz of it, and there's nothing like it. And the beauty about being called Pretty Crap is that you're setting the expectations, and the audience expectations really low, and the audience actually loves it. When we make mistakes, we don't rehearse very often, because I don't want to be the perfectly polished band, because it's much more real when someone makes a bit of a mistake and then we're like, whoa, and then we're back on track, and then someone else makes a bit.
No one really notices.
They care. They get into it. It's part of the. It is part of the story of Pretty Crap that we are. I'm still very much learning how to play lead guitar, because it's flipping. It's much more. I've been playing rhythm guitar, acoustic guitar, since I was a kid, but but electric lead guitar is a whole different situation. And bearing in mind, you know, if a man is playing that guitar, the span of their fingers and the size of their hand and their ability to reach and you know, my hand is a lot smaller. Being able to reach and bend those strings and get in the right place and be able to press down, you know, it's difficult. So that is part of the story. And I think that often people give up because they don't think they're very good, because we've mistakenly put this quality stamp on everything, that we have to be brilliant at everything. And the brain doesn't care whether you're, you know, some musical superstar or just playing a guitar. You get the same benefits from it if you're rubbish or if you're brilliant.
Oh, really?
But people give up because they just think, oh, you know, I'm just not good enough. And there isn't really any such thing, because it's the taking part in it and the doing of it that gives the benefit of it.
Yeah, you just reminded me of my ex-husband. I married an opera singer.
Oh.
And he used to tell me that I'm tone deaf.
Yeah, right.
While at the time when Olivia was young and we were singing stories, he used to be really very critical at me. But so I get the same brain benefits if I'm tone deaf still, right?
Yeah.
I'm going to show him this clip.
And this is, yeah. And this is the beauty of choirs, okay? Because you can be in a mass of voices, and it doesn't really matter how good you are, and that even those who consider themselves tone deaf can improve their ability to kind of hit a note and identify a note, and through repeat performance, right? So, but the beauty of being within a choir is that you're not being singled out. You're in a mass of voices. So even if you're not the best singer, you're still having the best time within, because there's something very powerful about human voices singing together and with different harmonies, and it resonates, you know, that kind of the vibrational effect of it. And when you're singing that, because the vagus nerve is also, you know, innervates around the voice box area, and so as well as the breathing benefits of singing and the social benefits of singing and the dopamine effects of you know, just the workout that the brain gets, you're also training that vagal tone through the vibrational effect of making sound. You know, you can feel that. Yeah. It's a vibration, and everything is vibrating, right? This table is vibrating, the whole mass all around us. We're surrounded by energy and particles that are vibrating. And last night I was walking past a church with my dog, and a choir was in there doing a vocal warm-up there must have been 40 people in there, and they were literally just sitting in this choir. We went in and we stood in the hallway bit, and they were in that church. So the acoustics of the church were amazing anyway, but all of these people were just doing and the sound of it was so amazing, because it just there is something very magical about that thing, and that's why you know, it's disappointing that with you know, shows like the X Factor and all of those talent shows where they criticize people for not being the amazing singers, but we then benchmark ourselves on, I better not sing because I'm a terrible singer. It's like, the brain doesn't care. Yeah. We've just put this modern stamp on it called quality. The action of vibrating by pushing air through your vocal cords and making sounds like that is very deeply beneficial to us at a cellular level. And I think we need to get over that quality blocker.
So we talked a lot about the music benefits of music on my brain. But your first book, The Music Diet, subtitled The Rock and Roll Route to a Healthier, Longer Life. Now, for those of us who thought of music as just background entertainment, how can music improve my chances of longevity?
Well, it's the one thing that's with us before we're born. So we can be exposed to music in the womb. It's vibration. So you're being exposed to it before you even enter the world. And it's the one thing that plays us out after we have passed away, because we'll have it at our funeral. So it's the thing that we hear in the very beginning, and it's the thing that is still with us at the end. And the benefits throughout the life course in between that are immense, because we know that in early childhood, if you're exposed to music, then there are significant impacts around brain development. So you go through a pruning effect as you develop throughout childhood and into adolescence, when there's a pruning effect on the connections in the brain, because there are many, many, many connections in the brain that then are deemed by the brain to be not required. So there's a pruning effect that kind of tidies up all the connections that aren't needed. So the more exposure you get to things, and the more of those connections you use in the early days, the more you keep. And music is a very complex, and playing musical instruments in particular is a very complex skill. It requires many, many different parts of the brain working together in different complexities. So learning instruments during childhood, beneficial. Singing during childhood, beneficial. Writing music, listening to music, going to live performances, or being social, using music as a social glue to bring communities together and be in groups of activity. It's all, there is a ton of research that shows how that helps brain development, and then those connections in the brain can then help other things. So in LA, there's some interesting research going on at the Brain Institute at the University of Southern California, who partnered with LA, the Los Angeles Philharmonic Orchestra, I think it was, where they were actually measuring brain development of primary school children, and then teaching those children to play violin or whatever instruments they were teaching, and then looking at the impact on the brain development, and also looking at the impact on their academic scores. And you can see on a brain scan, musicians' brains look different because they are very highly connected, because it's a complicated thing, right? You need very fine motor muscle with your fingers to play an instrument. You're using your visual cortex because your eyes have to be involved. You're using every single part of the brain in rapid succession. So throughout childhood and early development, for definite. Then throughout adult life, again, it's a social impact tool, because it brings us together. It's a social workout. Listening to music from youth evokes, the feel-good response of just being safe, and that nostalgia effect that can be triggered, as well as learning instruments throughout life at any age. And then when you go into later life, you've got the cognitive reserve piece that we talked about, where, as well as bringing people together through that music making act, learning instruments at any age can help build new brain connections to help de-risk your brain aging journey by building as many connections as possible. So if some of them conk out, you've still got plenty of connections there that can carry the load and keep everything working.
Yeah. In addition to music, you also identified 3 critical biological factors to focus on for longevity. What are they, please?
Well, that's a very good question. Remind me, Hannah.
I think you said once in an interview, sleep, gut, stress. You deal with those
Oh,
first?
right. Yeah. So definitely my priority health pillar is sleep. I religiously look at my sleep quality every morning, just out of curiosity, throw a ring, so I measure it with the Oura ring. And I can see immediately if I've had a late night, or if I've eaten close to bedtime, or if I've had alcohol, the impact that has on my deep sleep in particular. And then the impact the next day of feeling rubbish and then seeking out crap food because I'm tired, and my brain is then craving calories, and the poor decisions that you make around food and drink and activity when you're tired. So sleep is always like number one. If you can master your sleep so that every day you're, wow, I just feel awake, I'm energized, I feel good. That is the foundation to then, right, I'm going to make great decisions about eating today. I'm going to tick off whatever the health habit is I'm focusing on this month. I'm going to focus on that. It just gives you a head start if you're refreshed.
I want to drill down in this a little bit, because we can't sometimes escape being sleep deprived on occasion or underslept. Why do I make bad decisions, especially regarding food, if I don't get enough sleep? Is there something related to my biology?
There is something related to the biology, which I can't remember, and I'll tell you who is doing really interesting work on this is the King's College London team that are also part of Zoe Nutrition, because they ran a really interesting study that monitored what people did the next day after a compromised night's sleep, what happened the next day in terms of consumption. And their finding of that research paper, which will be online, if you just search it, it'll come up. They've done videos about it and everything. I think it was 300 extra calories were consumed the next day, and not particularly good calories were consumed the next day. And there is a biological reason why we then crave certain types of food, and I can't remember why we do that. But there'll be a reason that the body is trying to top up energy because it feels tired or something like that. There'll be a compensatory effect that I can't remember exactly now why it occurs, but it's something that has been evidenced in several studies.
Yes. You also talk about the gut-brain axis as one of the 3 critical circuits. We usually think of our stomachs as food processors, but you're telling me that the brain talks, or the gut, the bacteria in the gut talks to the brain and decide whether I'm going to have a good day or bad day. How does it work?
So when we look at the parasympathetic nervous system, so you've got the autonomic nervous system, part of the nervous system, part of the entire nervous system. There are 2 critical branches: the sympathetic nervous system, which is the fight or flight response, and the parasympathetic nervous system, which is when we're not in fight or flight response, when we're doing all the other jobs, all the other housekeeping of digesting food, repairing damage, but basically prepping the body ready for the next emergency when the fight or flight system will be activated. And that system is a nerve called the vagus nerve, which when we talk about the breath work, you're activating that vagus nerve. When you're slowing down your breathing, there is the heart and lungs and that network are linked to that vagus nerve, but that vagus nerve also links to the gut. And so it's not a unidirectional communication channel, it's a bidirectional. So it's going both ways. So if you're suffering from high stress, it's common that you've got disrupted, stomach issues. And the other way around, if you have destroyed your gut microbiome through terrible food choices or a ton of alcohol or antibiotics for an infection that you've been given a prescription for, then that disruption of the gut microbiome and the chemicals that are linked to that gut microbiome will also, because this channel is a two-way communication channel, will then have consequences in the brain. So mental health and gut health are very closely linked. And I think often we separate all of these things off. And I was at Imperial College invited me to present at an event a couple of weeks ago, and there were about 100 clinicians there and NHS staff and community health workers. And on one of the panels, one of the clinicians was asked, if you could start again with the NHS, what would you do? And she said, I would remove all of these silos that we've created. Right, you have heart disease, right, cardiovascular, right, it's the cardiovascular route, and you're sent to that clinic down there. Yeah. And if it's obesity related, right, it's obesity related, so it goes down that route, and then you go to that clinic over there. And if it's some kind of orthopedic issue, or, you sent that, and they've got all these different routes for depending on what the ailment is and the person. And she said, what we now realise is that at the end of all of those corridors is the same advice. Eat the right things, be active, control your weight, get good sleep, drink more water. It's all the same advice. It doesn't matter what corridor you're sent down. It's a different team, but they're all giving the same advice. And I think that we've compartmentalized all of these different things, but everything interacts. Like the gut interacts with the brain, and your breathing interacts with the brain, and this interacts with that and that. That the complexities, it's all one system really. And it's one system that requires a handful of behaviours in your daily life to operate well. And I think separating everything off hasn't been helpful.
Yeah. So do we usually do something negative in our daily lives to jeopardize my gut's ability to talk effectively with the brain? In other words, what do I feed my stomach so it does the job efficiently?
Well, all the research now is because the advances in science, which has enabled us to create consumer products for health measurements, right? So we can do with a bit of poop, you can do a gut test, a stool test, and get a really pretty incredible reading of what gut bacteria is or isn't in your gut. And that has enabled that the boom of consumer health in that field in particular has delivered so much data to be able to start on top of the actual studies that have been done, like medical studies around that. You've also got the consumer data coming in at the same time, and that is really pointing now towards the importance of diversity across lots of different plants, lots of different types of fruits, vegetables, nuts, seeds, spices. It's all over the internet, the importance of eating natural foods and eating whole foods, but across, not sticking with the same, the way that we've that we sort of approach food is that you go into your cupboards and you go, right, what have I run out of? So you go and you buy the same thing over and over again because it's like,
That's me.
I've run out of this. And you make a list of all of the things that were in the fridge and now aren't in the fridge, and then you replace them. But what we should be doing is going across a much broader range of, oh, well, I haven't bought that, or I haven't bought this. And as part of the research years ago, I set up this fruit and veg box in Kent with a brilliant supplier, and I started putting 30 different types of fruits and vegetables in a fruit and veg box that people could have delivered to their home. And I was receiving it as well as part of the experiment. And I would be pulling out things out of this box and having to send a photo to my mum going, oh my God, have you seen it? What is that? I've never even looked at it. We'd have to look it up on the internet to try and figure out, firstly, what it is. Secondly, what you're meant to do with it. And because there are so many fruits and vegetables, and we tend to just, gravitate around the normal, peas, broccoli, carrots. And so trying to boost that diversity is definitely beneficial, because we are the way that when I was researching, I'm sure I can't remember now because it's just been so many years since I did that particular bit of research, but it's something like 5,000 plants in the world that you can eat or something like that.
Wow.
I mean, I can't. It's a lot. That could be wrong. Caveat out there to the geeks that will then look up the number and then correct me. It might not be right, but there are a lot of plants in the world that we can eat. But then, the agricultural industry sort of came along and we decided, right, which ones shall we grow and farm? And, which are the easiest to grow, which are the better. And we kind of farm a small number of different types of crops. And then those are what's in the shop. And those are the ones that we've kind of grown up with. And so we just use those things. But in our evolutionary past, we would have been foraging around and eating lots of different types of fruits and vegetables. So our gut bacteria does require that diversity. And the studies do show that if people who have a higher diversity of gut bacteria, so lots of different types of bacteria, like a zoo, I always try and explain it like a zoo. If I went to, I'm not a fan of zoos. I like animals to be out roaming free in their natural habitat. But let's say, for this example, you go to a zoo. If you want a really interesting zoo, and if you want to make that a business success, you need lots of different types of animals. And if you only bought food that is elephant food, and you tried feeding that to all of the different animals, it wouldn't work, because the chimpanzees need bananas, the giraffes need leaves, they all those different animals have a certain diet that they need. You can't just give every animal the same small type that might be the food for the elephants, and you can't. And the same with our gut bacteria, is that it is a zoo in there. There are lots of different types of bacteria all competing in there, and they thrive on different molecules. So you need to get that variety into your diet.
Yeah, I read somewhere in the past that we only grow vegetables or fruit based on two characteristics. One is how sweet they are. Second, how crunchy they are. So maybe there are some other very healthy plants that are maybe sour in taste or not very pleasant. So we don't do them just because they are not so appealing and people wouldn't buy them.
Yeah, I mean,
which is a shame.
It comes back to the business model. It's got a farmer will grow what shops will buy, and shops will stock what customers will buy. And so it is back to that. What are the nicest tasting, nicest looking products?
Are there any quirky out there hacks, biohacks that you experimented on yourself? Would you like to share that with us? Maybe some things that people might find weird?
I don't know if there's anything particularly weird. I've tried a lot of gadgets and didn't, there's a lot of the infrared saunas and the
That's interesting.
the ice baths and all of that kind of thing. And yes, the infrared face packs
It's
and all of that.
everywhere now
And
on
all of
social
that
media.
kind of thing. And
What does that do?
It's just, I think it's rejuvenating it's kind of a circulation effect. I'm not 100% sure, because I started moving away from all of the hype of the products out there, and because you've got, in the biohacking sphere, you've got at one end all of that kind of stuff, and the kind of extreme biohacking, and the Brian Johnson end of going to extremes.
He's mad, but I love him.
I'm down the other end of the biohacking spectrum, which is, what are the biohacks that already exist in the natural world? Daylight.
Going back to basics.
Daylight is a biohack. Heat is a biohack. All of those, temperature. So, I do focus in on those. Also, because the main aim of my research originally was, how do we make health achievable for everybody, not just the wealthy? And which is why I cancelled my gym subscription initially, because I'm like, well, not everyone can afford a gym subscription. So how can we do it without a gym, membership sort of thing? And that's what's, it's important to not overshadow the simple. When we've got all these people saying, oh yeah, you've got to do this and you've got to do that and you've got to buy this and you've got to buy that and you've got to buy this supplement and you've got to do this and creatine and this, that and the other. And it's like, guys, you just need to go for a walk, go to bed early, drink water, fruits, vegetables and healthy protein, and spend some time with your friends, avoid alcohol, avoid sugar and ultra processed food. It's kind of like
it's most of the battle.
It's just we're overcomplicating everything so much, because it's become a big business model, and I step back from that sort of, and this is why I stepped back from social media as well. Apart from the fact that I don't really.
You're really protecting your mental health.
Yeah, I'm not interested in it. It's not good for you. And also, I didn't want to be a part of that noise. So I wasn't interested in trying to build a following and become some celebrity health person earning my money like that. I wanted to find the solution to, why has nothing worked? And what should we be doing instead? That's the journey that I went on. And that, because I documented it in books and then started getting media coverage, I started gravitating into the periphery of this noisy influencer kind of world, which I don't think is helpful, because it's just making the landscape very noisy and very complicated. And then these simple things that are the golden nuggets are lost in the midst of it. It's like, oh yeah, just go to bed early. Yeah, that's right. There it is. And oh, pull that one out. It's like you have to kind of dig through the massive noise to get to the real basic truth.
Yeah, but you casually here mentioned heat and cold. Heat is, are you into sauna? Is that a good thing? What about cold? Do you advocate cold bursts or cold bath?
there is evidence out there around the effect of heat and saunas. And when I was doing my postgrad, so I did my postgrad at King's at the Institute of Neuroscience, the psychiatry, psychology and neuroscience. And I was quite interested in the lectures that we were looking at how in cases of depression where a lot of people don't respond to the medication. So you have some people who are on medication for depression and they don't need to be on it because it's kind of, it's being driven by something else, so chemically correcting isn't particularly helpful. But you've also got people who would benefit from that particular drug but don't respond to it, so it doesn't work for them. And there was research that we were looking at in quite a few lectures that were looking at the impact of things like warm baths and heat and giving someone that, because it's comforting, right? You feel safe when you sink into the warmth of something like that. It's like it's like an embrace, you're the warmth of being amongst other people. And it was really I found it really interesting how, wow, I can remember that when I have been like in previous decades when I've been in very, very stressful situations, I would run a bath. I would go and have
it's comforting.
It is comforting.
Yes.
And it has that impact of reassurance, of reassuring the brain that everything's okay.
Yes. Another book of yours, Neuron, Smart Wellness Made Easy. You document in this book a 12-month experiment on your brain, on your body. How was your health before and after that experiment?
Well, I did it. I was 49 and I had been, going to the gym and everything for decades. That was the world that I had evolved in. I'd built a health club chain. That is the world that we all thought that we were going to produce healthy nations by telling people to go to the gym and eat fruits and vegetables. But I was putting on £1 a year, and over the years, it wasn't. My clothes were still getting tight, and like, well, I'm doing the exercise, but my clothes are still getting tight, and this is so. I thought, right, I want to look at this differently because I wanted to take my kind of professional knowledge and my professional history hat off and go, what if we're wrong? So
were you doing all the right things at that time?
Yeah, I mean, I was so in my mind I was. So then I looked at it and started, cancelled the gym membership, and then for a whole year just tried to do different habits and started measuring things and started really looking at what I was eating actually, and the time that I was eating and the amount I was eating and what alcohol I was consuming and what time I was going to bed. And what I realised is that routine, you can't offset a bad daily routine with a gym membership. It doesn't work,
unfortunately.
You have to fix your nutritional habits. You have to fix your sleep habits. You have to fix your general activity habits. Just going to a class now and then doesn't fix what you're doing every single day in your regular routine. And so I started, found these 48 habits in my daily routine and started tackling various ones. And what happened is all my scores improved. So my gut health improved dramatically. The first gut health test I did was awful.
Really?
It was terrible.
Okay, in terms of
Just
variety?
very low diversity.
Okay.
Just not enough whole foods, not enough fiber, not enough. It was just not as healthy as I had thought. So by the end of the year, I'd lost weight. Without even trying, I just changed some habits. I didn't set out to lose weight. I set out to see if I could rectify different habits. I'd lost weight. My sleep was amazing. My skin was great. I started to grow out so I was dyeing my hair, but we were then in lockdown. The pandemic arrived midway through this, because I started this experiment January 2020, and then March 2020, everything changed.
Yes.
And just, I was just walking. That became my activity. And so, but by the end of that year, it was a real eye-opener to me in that you need to master the habits within your daily routine. Getting a list of instructions from a personal trainer or whoever it is, and then being expected to go and miraculously make all of those changes in your daily life, and identifying the changes. Because I'm seeing people around me now thinking that they are eating healthy food. And this happened to my mum, right? She thought she was eating healthy food, but there's stuff hidden in food. I can remember her phoning me when we were doing video calls. She said, "Oh, you'll be really pleased with me today. I've had vegetable soup." Great. Did you make it? No. There'll be sugar in that. And she'd be like, "Don't be ridiculous. Why would they put sugar in vegetable soup?" I was like, have you still got the carton? It's in the recycling. So, right, go and get the carton. So she brought back the carton, reading the ingredients. What?
I know.
Sugar. Why is there sugar in vegetable soup? And I'm like, this is why you have to make everything. Stop buying things, stop buying the jars of sauces, stop buying the this, that, and the other, because people don't realise what they're eating, and they don't realise how dangerous it is. And, she paid the price of, she had her gallbladder removed 2 years ago, which then increased her risk of this particular bowel cancer. And she did not have a very high fibre diet. And she didn't know, and it's difficult when you're talking to family members, because it's like, "Oh, stop nagging, because I'm always banging on about nutrition and things like that." But people do not realise how dangerous the food that we're putting in our mouth. You wouldn't put poison, you wouldn't drip poison into your eyes. And yet we're putting this stuff into our mouth, into our body, that's wrecking our cellular biology. And I don't think, despite all of the content that's out there, that message is not landing with people, because they're going I'm seeing every single day people all around me making the wrong choices because we've normalized it in society.
Yeah, very well said. Well, it's the food industry wanting to sell us more and more and more. What is sugar doing in vegetables? Yeah. It's a good point, but we trust the food industry. We trust big supermarket chains. We trust the government to look after.
Yeah, we do, and I honestly believe that in decades ahead, that future generations will be looking back at this period in history like we look back at, cigarette campaigns that featuring doctors and building with asbestos and things like that, which we now know in future generations will be looking back at this particular period in time and saying, "Wow, look what they were putting in their body."
Yeah, sugar will be the new cigarettes.
Yeah, definitely.
Hopefully.
Definitely.
On your own worst day, stressed, exhausted, everything's going wrong, you don't want to do much. What is the main or the bare minimum of routine you would still protect?
Sleep.
Yeah,
sleep, and just really desperately trying to avoid the hand going out for the packet of crisps or the pastry. I'm not a fanatic around food. I'm not militant about it. I will have a pastry. I will have a packet of crisps. I eat chocolate, but I try and eat 90% chocolate, not dark chocolate that's called dark chocolate on the packet, but then you look at the back and it's like 47% or 37%.
It's criminal.
Yeah, it's bad. It should be illegal. But I do try and protect sleep, and I am scared now of eating certain things because I know I can just visualize, having this massive blood glucose spikes, and like, as in damaging, not a a normal one, but
it is scary. It is very damaging. It is scary when you know the signs.
Yeah, and so I don't enjoy it as much. So I'll give you an example. If I'm going to go and meet someone for a drink or something like that, I will really try and go and have some kind of healthy food before I go and have a drink, because the thought of putting a pint of lager or whatever it is, like a waterfall into my empty small intestine, then like flooding out into my system,
that would give you a bigger insulin spike.
Yeah,
right?
So to try and go and have a really healthy meal, so that there's a load of good food in that area to kind of stop that crashing wave of a pint of lager arriving in there. I just try and think more mindfully about what I'm doing, whilst not being a boring nag saying, oh, you shouldn't be drinking anything, you shouldn't be enjoying any of these foods that we've invented, because you can enjoy some of this stuff in a way that doesn't necessarily have to have mega damage to your health.
Yeah, I'm the boring nag. I'm the most strict soul you would ever see but that's because I have autoimmune diseases and I'm struggling with other things. So the only solution that I found that keeps my body and my brain and my mental health stable, and it's just diet. I follow a very strict organic keto diet. But it's a shame that I've developed in old age a certain food phobia. It's such a shame, because at midlife you think you're set with all the whatever negative things you have mentally or emotionally. You're just sorting out what happened in the past. But I've developed that phobia. I never touch anything that's not organic now. There is a case to be put for organic food, but I'm taking things to extreme a little bit, which is not helpful. But because I have all these diseases, I have to manage them somehow.
And I think that when people don't necessarily realise the link, between skin conditions and mental conditions and sleep conditions, and the impact that their diet has on all of that. And with the organic, I always try to go organic first, and that's become more and more. And fibre, I'm obsessed with fibre now, because I've lost several people really shockingly and suddenly to bowel cancer, and to just really trying to focus in on increased water, increased fibre, but the recently, when you get an organic free range chicken and you realize how little meat there is on it.
And let me tell you that.
And then
it's super dry.
And then, but
they
then
feed them something in the farms that make the flesh succulent. But when you get the organic stuff, it's incredibly dry.
Yeah, but also you realize that, so a chicken is not meant to look like all of the other chickens that are all puffed out and plumped up.
The other one is lean.
To a certain, how do you think they're doing that? Because this little chicken over here is what a chicken is meant to look like.
Yeah, with less fats. That's why it's dry.
Yeah, right? It's a lot smaller. It's a lot, and we're pumping food out. It's like, oh my God, it terrifies me.
The hormones, the antibiotics, all the lovely things.
It terrifies me, and I just, I always think this around exercise. When you've got someone who works full time in a gym, and they're paid to do exercise. That is their job. I used to run a health club chain. I was paid to be in that environment doing exercise. Someone who is paid to be there and do that exercise, telling someone who has got a really busy job and 3 kids and a dog that has to be walked and everything else, that they have to do all of the things that they do, but they're paid to be there full time. And the same with nutrition. When you work in this field and you're earning money from eating in that way, and then telling other people to try and eating that way, they don't necessarily identify with you because you don't have the same existence as them. So it's about trying to normalize it so that people understand. And that's why when we keep going back to this wake-up call, I think people do realise that they're being played, that this is a very dangerous game that we're in. You can't believe what you read. You have to turn that product over and read the ingredients. You cannot believe what's on the front packaging of that product. You have to turn it over and read for yourself and understand that the items at the top of the list are the ones that there's most of those in there. And
sugar comes at the top with 60%.
And in using different
syrups.
Names.
Syrup is sugar.
And all different names. And it's like, that one's sugar, that one's sugar, that one's sugar. And the realization that, certain carbohydrates very quickly convert to sugar. It's this... I think that there is a big knowledge gap because it is quite complicated.
It can be.
And that's why I try to say, look, do not, in that neuron book, I put the effing rule of thumb, which was avoid, but basically eat things if they come from the field, the farm, or if it's a fish.
That's an amazing tip.
And the
natural stuff.
And the other F's to avoid: do not eat food that's been made in a factory or is fast food.
Yes. Yeah. That's brilliant. You have another book, The F-Bomb. Longevity Made Easy. It has a lovely title. You can't say the F word here in this show, don't worry. So tell us about that. I was just
about to ask.
No, you're cool. YouTube doesn't punish us for that, which is okay. The title hints at the shock value of some of the research you've done there. Tell us about that.
The aim of that book is that sort of the outcome of my research journey was, I'd been looking at so many different things that we thought were going to be the answer to the health crisis and then aren't actually the answer to the health crisis because people can't make them habits. So just doing gut health for a little while and drinking kefir for a couple of months is not going to have an impact if you don't keep doing it. And taking vitamin D every day in the winter, which we should be doing in this country, only works if you keep doing it, not if you buy one spray and it runs out after 30 days and then you forget to go and buy another one and then you don't do it. So none of this stuff works unless you can create a lasting habit and it becomes your normal routine. And so F-bomb, I just started looking at, the whole thing. I was just getting to the point where I just think we need to be really honest about the fact that the whole system is fucked. It really is. Like the whole, not just the, I've just been in the midst of the NHS system with Mum. Horrendous. And this is no fault of the people who were working in the NHS. They're all lovely. They're doing their best. The system was shockingly bad. From
in what terms?
From the minute that she was diagnosed to she died in A&E in the end. There were no beds anywhere. We were in A&E for days. It's just the whole system. It just, none of this is working. The food system, it is all screwed. And so that book, I basically listed a load of Fs to show how the journey over millions of years of evolution of how we got to this point. So things like we started farming, and so that reduced the amount of foods that we were exposed to. Like we were talking about the amount of, the types of crops and the amount of we were then eating a lot more meat because we kept, instead of having to run around after animals, we kept them in secure areas so that we could just breed them and eat a lot more meat. And we'd invented fire so that we could start cooking things and start consuming more calories in a different way because we could make things easier to digest because we'd invented fire. And so all these Fs, and then it kept going through the fat that we vilified fat and told everyone to stop eating fat, which then pushed us all towards carbohydrates. Then we said fitness was going to be the answer, and then that wasn't the answer either because it doesn't fix what you're eating. And so all these, I kind of documented all the Fs, the journey to the point where we are now, and then started looking at the Fs that are going to get us out of it, right? So frequency of behavior. You have to repeat a habit with high frequency over months and keep doing that for the rest of your life. You have to create forever habits, not temporary habits. More fiber, more, looking at fasting.
No, what do you think of that?
Different bodies respond in different ways to it. So the way I personally approach the fasting as a kind of thing, I recognised that I was eating in the way I'd been taught when I grew up, which is basically the way society has been taught to eat, is that you wake up and you immediately have breakfast, and then you'll have a snack, and then you'll have lunch, and then you'll have something in the afternoon, and then you'll have something late at night because I wouldn't get home until late, and so I'd have dinner late, a meal, and I realised that I was consuming a lot of, like, all of that consumption and I was only doing that because that is the routine I'd been taught.
Yes.
And that was the routine I was seeing in society. And so when I started to move food away from my bedtime window, not eat late in the evening, which was reducing that eating period throughout the day.
Would you have breakfast?
And then then I'd be like, well, am I hungry? No, I'm not hungry. Well, why am I eating now then? So if I wake up and I'm hungry, I'll have breakfast. Or if I'm going somewhere where I know I don't have access to food, I'll have breakfast. If I'm not hungry when I get up, I'll eat when I get hungry. And so that has resulted in me eating less calories because I'm not eating unnecessary meals. And obviously I'm eating differently than I was previously because I'm just eating a lot more fruits and vegetables. A very minimal, very rare ultra processed foods, just not even like, you know, training the hand when I go into a coffee shop to say, right, I'll have an Americano or I'll have a filter coffee with a little splash of milk or oat milk, not the latte. Or the hand doesn't go shooting out for the pan au raisin, it goes shooting out for the banana. You know, just those little switches.
Yeah, smart switches.
That make a big difference. But also having a smaller eating window definitely improved my sleep health because I was not eating late at night. And I can see it on my scores now. If I have a late meal, I know it's going to be disastrous on the sleep score because it just disrupts, especially if, you know, you're out and you might have had a glass of wine with it or something.
You apparently returned to your body from your 20s in your 50s. I could see that you have an incredibly small waist. I know that you don't care about aesthetics. I know that
this is the waistband.
Yes, really lovely, but you don't care about that, but you care about health. But most women are told that with menopause or aging, that kind of healthy weight is impossible. Now, what is the truth about female metabolism that the weight loss industry isn't telling us?
Well, in my own experience with clients, and I'll do two. We'll talk about my own experience with clients and my own experience as a 55-year-old woman. So if you start putting on weight when you're 30, a pound a year, you're not going to notice. Over 10 years, that's 10 pounds. Over 20 years, that's 20 pounds. So if I'd been putting on a pound a year since 30, I would now be 25 pounds heavier. And that was definitely the trajectory that I was on. And a lot of women say to me that they've put on weight because they're now 50 and everything. And I'm like, honestly,
no,
you've been putting on a pound a year.
Okay.
And now it's starting to be noticeable, right? Because after a pound a year, it's now a noticeable amount when it keeps going like that. And being honest about what you're eating and what you're drinking, and then making adjustments to that, can have really surprisingly incredible results. Because most people I meet are eating too much, they're eating the wrong things, they're drinking too much alcohol, and often they don't realize that they are because they still think that they're doing the right thing. But the reality is that, you know, you need a lot less than you think you do.
Yeah.
And you're eating a lot of hidden stuff and hidden sugars that you don't know that you're eating. So with me, I went for, I've been doing mystery shopper as part of my research for years. So I go to gyms and I do the gym induction, and then because I'm curious to see what the instructors are taught these days and what they know and what they don't know and how dated their knowledge is in a lot of instances. No, really very limited nutritional understanding. But I went to a menopause clinic, did a mystery shopper, boom, prescription, like immediately. And I was just really fascinated how...
Hormones.
Yeah. I was really fascinated how that was just kind of like pushed as a first sort of response. And I, I didn't really... I was, hot. There was definitely... I was noticing the temperature fluctuations, especially at night. But I thought, no, I'm just going to, focus in on my habits and keep focusing in on the food and focusing in on the sleep and the drink and avoiding caffeine and avoiding alcohol, because I know that those are triggering, and just focusing in on that. And then everything just, evened out. But if I had lunged for the prescription, I would have assumed that those symptoms all disappeared because of the medication. And I would have attributed that to that medication, whereas actually they just all naturally kind of settled down. Yeah. So it was a really interesting personal experiment with that.
Yeah, I'm now in HRT. I started maybe 6 months ago, and I took it as long as I could with whatever symptoms I have. But when it came to the hot flushes every 10 and 15 minutes, I couldn't. But I was collecting a prescription a week ago, and I saw the lovely pharmacist helping another lady with the prescription certificate. And I saw the patient, bless her. So she was incredibly overweight and having HRT. Oh, it might help, might not help, but that's not the point. I mean, the first point of action is to work with the weight, the exercise, the diet. Then if you reach a point where I was, that's it. I exhausted everything. I work out every day. I eat well, but it's not working. Ovaries are failing. There's nothing I can do about it. I have to survive. I took the HRT and it went beautifully. I mean, beautiful reaction from my body. Everything is stable and beautiful now. But for others, maybe we could start with the basics first.
Yeah.
I just felt for her. I mean, I wasn't...
Yeah. But also people want the immediate fix. It's things that are long term. This is why, with the weight loss drugs right now, it's what's the fast fix, what's the easiest route, and changing habits is tough and takes a long time.
Yeah. Going back to changing habits again, and Holidity, which we should definitely focus more on. During the research and development of Holidity, experienced initially with purely digital content. What were the results there?
So this journey with the startup has been a 6-year journey of... I wanted to know... I wanted to find out why nothing works, basically. Why has the diet, fitness and wellness, the revenues have been growing and growing and growing over 50 years, but so has average waistline size, and so has the scale of the health crisis. So there's clearly a flaw in the model. What is it? And I persuaded some lovely angel investors to give me money so that I could go on this journey to try and find the solution. And we looked at gut health, we looked at the fruit and veg deliveries, we looked at the wearables, we looked at apps, we looked at all kinds of different things. We looked at online content, so digital content, and it all kept coming back to the same thing, which is most people will be able to start all of that stuff with good intentions, but then fizzle out unless they have human support. Because of the way the brain forms habits, the long-term potentiation process, it's slow, biological, needs repeat behaviour, preferably every day, 4 months to reach a stabilised endpoint. So then the model changed. The research question then became, okay, we know that if you give someone human support, they're most likely to keep going. Then we found the minimum effective dose of human support, which is as simple as someone acting as the accountability partner, showing up for the other person every day with a quick WhatsApp message saying, hey, I've been here doing this podcast today. did you do your habit today? And they just respond with a thumbs up if they've done it, or heart if they haven't, but their heart's still in it. And once we saw the huge retention figures that we were getting from just that simple process, we then built a platform that enables behaviour change providers, whether that's in employee wellness or in gyms or clinicians or whoever it is, to then use the platform so that they just have to send one message a day, and the platform delivers it as a private individual WhatsApp message to every single person on that program that they're helping on their habit change journey. And so that's where we're at.
Yeah, I read somewhere that 7 out of 10 pilot users continue to keep their healthy habits a year maybe after they stopped using Holidity. What did the other 3 teach you about where the system needs a bit of improvement?
So the way, so that was the first. So that first pilot we ran with ITV as part of their employee wellness program, and a cohort of sort of general public that had signed up for the pilot, and they checked in every day. I was acting as the accountability partner, sending the daily message on WhatsApp. They were responding, and we had, at the end of 90 days, 69% was still responding. I mean, that is a super high. So we couldn't actually capture how many people were reading the daily message but not responding. But we were only capturing the actual responders. But still very high after 90 days of, they were still regularly checking in. But then I had to wait for a year to then go back and 12 months later say, hey, just checking in again. It's been 12 months since we were doing our daily check-ins, and just interested to know if you're still doing the habit that you chose. And 7 out of 10 was still doing it, right? So, but we're never going to get 100% success. Sure. But what was interesting about that particular cohort is that most of the people who succeeded were people who sort of identified with me. So they were 40 plus women, and they were, they resonated with me as a person, and just the daily life that I was having, that I was showing them, selfies of, hey, I'm here today doing this. How are you doing? Did you do your habit today? So which now is why our platform right now is a B2B platform. It's a piece of software that other businesses can use, because the greatest effects happen, either when you're identifying with the person that is acting as your accountability partner. So that, it might be your football coach, or it doesn't really matter who the person that you've signed up to work on this habit is. The fact is, you have a connection with them. That's why you chose them. And also, you have had some sort of interaction with that person. So you've either had a gym induction, so you've been with them in the gym, or you've had a virtual call, if it's, with a nutritionist or something like that. There's been some sort of live interaction between you and that person. So that is when the greatest impact will then be, when that person starts sending the daily check-in message every day saying, hey, just checking in as promised. Just let me know, did you do the habit today that we're working on right now? So it's a B2B platform, and that I think is the greatest way to deliver value from this, because delivering it as a consumer product would mean I would have to be the accountability partner, and with people I'd never met signing up from Instagram or something like that. And I just don't think that would deliver the greatest results compared to giving it as a tool to professionals who are working in that field, who are struggling with retention with their clients. It's a retention tool. So that's how it's evolved. And that's now since, we've just started running the corporate pilots that we've been running in the last couple of months with some really big, employers, delivering engagement of above 90, consistently above 90%. So that's 90% of people who are at the very least reading the daily message, and then again 70% who are responding. So we've replicated the results of the first thing. So it definitely works, and the simplicity of it is why it works. It's not AI, it's not tech, it's a human being who has committed to show up for you every day by writing a real message that comes to you, and your commitment is that you will reply. And that's the simplicity of it, and that's why it works.
We have become so insensitive. Our brains are so insensitive to notifications and gadgets and apps and these things. I remember maybe 3 years ago when I decided, it's time to lift weight, to build muscle mass and all the rest of that. And I had the notification on my calendar every single day in the morning. Every day it would beep and swipe up and me doing nothing.
Yeah.
I only started seriously when I had these lovely sits with health professionals talking to me about things.
Yeah.
Was a year and a half when I took this seriously and started, because of the human connection.
Yeah.
There's a real doctor with a medical degree in front of me telling me that this is important, that this will affect my longevity. I'm an old mom. I want to be healthy and fit to look after my grandchildren. So that was important to me. So that human interaction was the thing that tipped me over. I'm going to do this.
And we've definitely entered the era that is now being called the app fatigue era, because we've just got, there'll be a handful of apps that you use regularly every day, and then there'll be tons of apps on your phone that you've downloaded, used once or twice, and now they're gathering dust on your home screen somewhere.
TV presenter Steph McGovern was so impressed with your program that she wrote the foreword to one of your books, and she even invested in your company.
Yes.
Right? Are you allowed to tell us what Steph experienced within the program?
Yeah. I mean, she's spoken about it a lot. She was struggling with gut issues and for years and years and years and years, and various other, energy, and she had a very high-paced TV job, there's a lot of pressure, and she tried various things and hadn't managed to master the habits. And so I went on her TV show to talk about the Neuron book, and then she did she did an 8-week with me, learning about different habits and trying different things like the fasting and just eating differently, introducing more probiotic foods and kefirs and things like that into her diet, stripping out different things, and she experienced significant changes through that, and so became very invested in that whole thing, not just in this company, but invested in the whole story of it. She's actually just launched a gym in Newcastle, which is where she lives, and so she gets it because she experienced it herself. She saw how making some changes to her daily routine, absolutely, especially on the nutritional front, food is medicine, and if you're putting the wrong things in, then you pay the consequences. If you put the right things in, you reap the rewards.
Yeah. And you guys went on and opened a wellness center with a live bacteria bar. What is a live bacteria?
So basically we opened a bar that had loads of probiotic drinks. So kombuchas, tons of different types of kombuchas that have live bacteria in, kefirs, and we opened that for 12 months in Kent, in Folkestone. We were testing out a model. Basically, it was part of our R&D to say, right, is this kind of space the answer? Should gyms be reinvented? Should there be a different approach to how you bring people together for health? And, we had an AI bike in there, and we had this, that, and the other. And but what the most valuable thing that came out of that 12-month pop-up was the stories of all the people coming, and the stories that people were saying about how they had tried to change their habits but not succeeded, and they'd tried to do the gut health but they'd fizzled out and stopped buying the kefir, and they'd tried this but they'd fizzled out, and they'd tried sea swimming but then they'd fizzled out of that, and so it just gave more evidence about the fact that habits is the problem in general, right? If people can't master how to help the brain form a lasting habit, then people are just drifting in and out of fads.
Yes.
They're trying this for a little bit, and then they're fizzling out. Then they're trying something else for a little bit, or trying the same thing again and then fizzling out. You have to crack the habit formation challenge. And so that pop-up was just gave us more evidence, basically, that resulted in what Holidity is now, which is this platform that enables health and wellness providers to deliver that human support at scale on a daily basis really easily.
How about the NHS? Have you tried partnering with NHS doctors to spread Holidity on a more population level scale?
I've had a lot of conversations with the NHS. Brilliant people who totally understand what we're doing and absolutely agree that this is the solution. We need to give people more human support. This is what we do. This is what our platform enables. The unfortunate thing about the NHS, so I'm still having those conversations with those people because they get it and they're enthusiastic, and we want to work with people like that. But it's so complicated. The NHS is just so complex that, as a business owner who has been in the R&D phase for years and years and years more than we thought we were going to be in the R&D phase, because it took a long time to figure out the answer and then build the product. To try and work with the NHS is like the route to bankruptcy, because it takes so long to try and get anything signed off that it's just not, it just cannot be a focus, which is a real shame for the NHS, because it means that a lot of companies who have brilliant innovations often don't bother going to the NHS because it's just too complicated. Or it takes so long for the NHS to get through to them that those companies no longer exist by the time they've got to a point of contract or before then. So we are, I am actively engaging with the NHS and there are conversations going on, but it is not on our roadmap it's not on our financial projections or anything like that, because it's just too complicated.
Dr. Jones, we usually end our episodes with visionary. Not that what we have been discussing in the last 3 hours is not visionary, but moral questions, ethical questions, the tough ones. I want to know from you the hardest shift when you switched off from a scientist and a researcher to a CEO. How did you experience that change?
Well, so I've always had one foot in each camp. So I've been building businesses since I was, my tennis coaching business in the late 80s. So I'm quite familiar with it, and it is in my DNA to have that entrepreneurial approach. So I've always been part in academia, part in industry. And the scientist side of me sees a problem, wants to try and fix a problem, wants to find out what's causing the problem, wants to find out what the solution to the problem is. And once you've achieved that, the dream would be that you could just then give it to everybody.
For free.
But then the reality is that in the other camp, you then have to figure out how to build a business model around it and turn it into a viable rollout that can commercially succeed. And ultimately that has to involve money. It has to be a product that provides value that someone will pay for, to pay their pain, to address their pain point in their business, which is why things like, the fitness sector organisations that we're speaking to, retention is a big issue for them, because people join and then they leave. And so you have to get new members into the funnel constantly. That is the business model. Same with the weight loss industry. People sign up for weight loss and they'll do it for a while and then they'll drop out. So it's a repeat, trying to get new people into the funnel. The corporate wellness clients are looking at it from a retention point of view again, because they're spending millions on employee wellness programs that aren't actually engaging employees and are not actually producing sustained behavior change. So this product, the Holidity platform, addresses both of those things. But when you look at NHS doctors, for instance, who want to help their patients change, form these habits, because they're advising the patient to change their habits, and they want to try and help the patient change their habits. But there's no business model around that. Who's going to pay for it? Why would the GP? What does the GP gain from paying to use our software so that they can send the daily check-in saying, "Hey, doctor, checking in. Let me know. Did you do the habit today?" There's no financial incentive that it would be a cost to them, and currently their job isn't that piece. It's not that behavior change piece. That's not what they're paid for. The business model there doesn't work in the same way as it does for us in the health and fitness, commercial health and fitness sector, and in the employee wellness sector.
But can we think of it as when we establish the idea of preventative health, this down the road will save money on the NHS solving health problems and issues. They pay for medication, right? They employ doctors to see patients down the thing. So, I appreciate that the NHS's main job is to solve the problem after it takes place, which is a shame. But you raised investment and you worked with big names in this domain. Was pitching a neuroscience product to non-scientists a challenge?
So the angels that came in with investment are not in this field, and they were hands off. They were passive, so we could just get on with it. There were no demands or expectations. And now that we're going into the next stage of the business with a second investment round, the question is, who do we bring onto the cap table and give shares in the company? And who do we not? Because personally, it's more beneficial for us to get angel executives than angel investors, because angel investors will bring money, and yes, we would only really be bringing in angel investors who can also bring added value. So either they've got contacts so they can open doors and drive sales, or they've got specific experience that is very relevant to this as a tech, B2B tech SaaS product. So those kind of angel investors could be beneficial, but angel executives are what I would prefer to bring in now, because angel executives basically roll up their sleeves and join the team, get into the trench with me and start building the product and selling the product and moving the product forward. It's also known as sweat equity, is that they join the team early and get this to the next level. And so that a couple of angel executives now, I think, would be more valuable if they were the right people than angel investors.
Yeah. How do you see or foresee the health space in the next 20 years or so?
Well, I very much hope that it's extremely different to what it is right now, which is kind of wellness theatre. It's all gone very commercial, and, you know, the landscape is littered with products, and even more so in America. I was in New York a couple of weeks ago and watching the Winter Olympics, and every advert was cancer drugs, obesity drugs, this drug, that
They're
drug,
allowed to
this
have
drug.
ads for drugs there?
Yeah. And
Really?
basically those TV adverts are telling the viewer to ask their doctor to prescribe this drug to
Thank
them.
goodness we don't have that here.
So yeah, so we've kind of, you know, we're going down the wrong road. Everyone knows it's the wrong road, and I think we in the last decade or so we went down the digital health road, thinking that apps and sending people tech nudges was going to be the miraculous solution, which we now know that doesn't work either. So I think the future of health is going to be putting humans back in at the forefront. Human support, you know, that we've now demonstrated. The amount of support you have to give is actually not very much. You just have to show up for someone every day, and technology can enable that sort of human support to be delivered at scale. And so I think that human-centered delivery is going to be how things move forward. And people are already, they're gravitating away from apps and towards human things, whether that's signing up for, you know, group training sessions or joining community walking groups or community. People are gravitating towards humans, and I think that is going to be the future model.
Yeah. In your book, The F-Bomb, you charted several factors that contributed to the downfall of human health over the last 6 million years.
Just a few million, yeah.
Yeah, but that's quite an epic time scale. I'm assuming that the aim was to explain how we got into this health mess, right?
Yeah, and looking at it from a, you know, from that just loads of F's that got us to that point, and some things that you wouldn't think of, because I read quite a lot of interesting research during this journey, looking at the impact of how we, you know, let's just get into the nitty-gritty of it, how we go to the toilet, and the fact that biologically we are designed to crouch to go to the toilet.
Yes.
But we have invented a toilet that is a chair, which isn't the natural position for those pipes.
I remember years ago, it was 20 years ago, when I visited Syria, and I was visiting friends or whatever. It was an open shop, and I wanted to use the loo. They told me they use the loo there. Okay. I went in, I went, well, where's the toilet?
The hole.
Yeah, the hole. Yeah. It's just we're not so used to that, but it is more hygienic.
Yeah.
And you're not touching anything.
It is the position, it's the physical position that we're designed to be in to, you know, for our waste to evacuate the body. And so there was some, you know, some of the doctors in the US that were kind of trying to link this to bowel health and constipation, and because it's more difficult to pass stools for people when they're already compromised because they're not actually in the correct physical position for that. So it's just, so the book sort of documented lots of little things like that. You know, that F was furniture, that we've invented things that we can really comfily sit on for hours on end because they don't hurt, and our beds are now super comfortable. And so that particular F in the book was, you know, I was just looking at things that we might not think of had an impact on the health journey that have actually had an impact on the health journey. Because, if you take just that furniture example, we now sit down way more than we used to because it's really comfortable to do so. Because we've invented these things to make it comfortable. And
if we brought an unsuspecting human being from 50,000 years ago and we let that person into our supermarkets or in a 24-hour gym, which part in their biology would break first, if you could imagine that?
Well, there's been research showing how when people move from an environment where they have a very high diversity of nutritional intake and they move location and then are introduced to a Western diet, high in ultra-processed foods, the impact on their health through that is well documented. That
what happens to them?
It's rapid weight gain and all of the weight-related chronic diseases that are attached to that. It's and the same if they were then working in the office, sitting in front of the screen all day. It's because that the people who are still living that hunter-gatherer lifestyle, which there are still tribes in the world that are living in that way, that we from our ancient past, that's how we lived. So they're not from 50,000 years ago, but they're still living the lifestyle and experiencing that way of life today. So we have evidence of what happens, and it's clear that this existence is very damaging beneath the surface. But because of most of these illnesses have very few noticeable symptoms until they're at an advanced level, you're stepping in really late. Yeah. Even at a stage 1 of an illness, that's stage 1 that's been with noticeable symptoms, like we were saying, having preventative scans and things like that to see what's going on beneath the surface. That's the only way, and to be having like things like bowel cancer screening, and those screenings are lifesavers.
You also advise the UK government on things like dementia, AI and longevity. What kinds of policy changes that you push for?
Well, the dementia piece. So I was involved in the NHS built the first dementia village, which is in Kent, and it's the first one that's been built by the NHS. And I worked with that team, basically joined them to introduce music and help them write music into the strategy for care for the residents that were moving into that village and for the members of staff. So I was my dementia work has been music focused, of helping highlight why it should be embedded into that model of care, because it has such exceptional responses. And with the longevity piece, it's kind of like really my evidence contribution in those all-party parliamentary groups has been around just continually repeating the fact that it's not about complicated solutions. So it's not about getting a longevity drug or getting an anti-aging drug, or let's put more money into this research for this drug. It's about how do we help people form the right habits and give them enough support so that those habits are strong enough to just become the new automated normal. With your hands off, they just operate on them by themselves, So that was how what I've been championing.
Yeah. How do we make sure that all the lovely biohacks that we've been talking about today doesn't become like a luxury for the elite? Is there a way to democratize longevity?
This is why I've been looking at the natural end of the biohacking spectrum. So what are the free biohacks? Music, daylight, social interaction with your friends and family, walking. What are the things? Most early bedtimes. Most of the key pillars of health don't require any money at all. And when you look at the nutritional piece, and we know that, organic foods are more expensive, they're more difficult to find, they're more, eating healthily can be more expensive than the cheap, ultra-processed foods. But what I found really in my own case, and a lot of other people who've done this as well, when we looked at what we were eating and realised it was way too much and reduced the amount of food that we were eating, you're still spending less money on food, even if you eat organic, because you're not buying as much food.
Yes.
Because you're not overeating.
Are there any scientific breakthroughs on your radar now that could channel into longer health span for us?
Well, the hot topic on the radar are the weight loss drugs. And this is a whole new era, this is a real breakthrough, because they work, people aren't hungry, and so they eat less. So I think that the second part to that breakthrough, which hasn't been achieved yet, is how to build the exit ramp.
Exit ramp, what is that?
So you've got the person starts taking the weight loss drug, they're not hungry, they eat less, they lose weight. If they then just stop that, there is a rebound effect, because then their appetite returns, they eat, they regain weight. So there has to be an exit ramp of how to, while they are on the drug and losing the weight, which is highly motivational, because as we said, success breeds success, right? Yeah. So it's like, wow, this is absolutely incredible. This is fantastic. I'm losing weight. How you then use that excitement and that motivation to help them channel it into habit change, so that they are putting in place routines that then set them on the right habits when they come off the drug, and when you start to taper them off the drug. So they're not, someone who's not going to make any changes to how they think about food, the food they buy, their routines, their activity routines. If they've made no changes at all, then they have to be on that drug for the rest of their life. Otherwise, the weight comes back on. So the second breakthrough has to be the breakthrough in conquering habit change, which is the space I've been in for 6 years, right? It's like, right, we have to conquer that bit, because the breakthrough of the drug is brilliant, because it does produce the results, but you cannot have people on that drug for forever. Firstly, it's too expensive. Financially, it would cripple everybody. But also, we don't know the long-term impact on health of these sort of things. No one's been on these drugs for a lifetime yet. So that is, I think, that is the breakthrough of this current era right now. But there's a piece missing, which is the other breakthrough in habit change.
Yeah, Dr. Julia Jones, hearing how you passionately integrate things like science, technology, and music into preventative care made me think that the future of healthcare could be a beautiful collaboration between data, science, and joy as well.
Yeah.
Today you taught us the power of neuroplasticity, that I can physically change my brain. I'm not stuck in the brain. I have with lots of patients, lots of perseverance, but it can happen, which gives us hope that change is doable. In an age of high tech, it felt grounding to know that all it takes for happy change is a simple human touch.
Yeah.
That's all we need. That's what can add healthy years, not only to statistics, but also to families and communities. There is definitely a rock and roll spirit in your scientific work, and we're very grateful for that. Thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you. Thank you.